right. Welcome to Washington City Council workshop meeting. It's March 23rd, just after 4 o'clock. We're in the Washington City, Utah Council chambers, and this meeting is being broadcast via YouTube live linked at washingtoncity.org/meetings. Council member Martinson will be joining us shortly and remotely, and may have to leave prior to the end of this meeting. So at this time, I will call for an approval of the agenda.
I'll make a motion we approve the agenda as outlined.
Motion by Coates,
I second that.
second by Henderson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The agenda is approved. We'll start off with item number 2. So 2022 Legislative Review, Public Affairs Officer Jordan Hess.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council, and residents. I just wanted to give a quick summary. The legislative session ended just 3 weeks ago. As you're aware, it's a 45-day sprint from start to finish. But as you've probably seen in the news, the legislative activity hasn't quite ended. There is a veto override session that has been scheduled for this Friday, dealing with a piece of legislation that would ban trans athletes from competing in female sports. So they're still working out that issue. The governor has vetoed that bill, and the Senate and House will meet on Friday to try and overturn that veto. This year they produced the largest state budget in the history of our state at about $25 billion. They had a large surplus that they were able to allocate, almost $1 billion worth of a surplus. However, they received $2.5 billion of requests. So even though they had the surplus, the requests far outpaced the amount of money they had to appropriate. The reason for this surplus is increased sales tax revenue here in the state, and also a lot of the COVID ARPA funding that is still hasn't been used. So the legislature was really careful on how to appropriate these funds. They appropriated most of it as a one-time fund rather than an ongoing appropriation, because with COVID hopefully going away soon, they're not sure how much of that funding, that surplus we saw this year, will continue for years down the road. However, they spent about $500 million on water projects, which I think is important for our part of the state.
How much did they spend in Washington County?
Well, that's yet to be seen, but they did receive some funding for some retention basins over in Santa Clara and Ivins. And then there was also the secondary water metering bill that will mandate that all municipalities meter their secondary water by the year 2030. Any municipality that fails to do so could be at risk of losing all state water funding going forward after the year 2030. Luckily, our state has seen this coming, or our city has seen this coming, and we've been mandating that any new development be piped for secondary water. But there was some grant money that was included in that legislation to help municipalities to reach that goal. There's grant money to remove turf from landscaping. Some other pieces of legislation that I think would be beneficial to the residents of Washington City. They did lower the state income rate from 4.95 to 4.85 tax rate, both for personal income and the corporate tax rate as well. So our residents will see an average savings of about $100 a family. In today's world, that's about 1 tank of gas. So there were 513 bills passed. There were over 800 that were introduced. And then some other things that happened. HB 151 prohibits a municipality from providing incentives to retail facilities, except in certain cases. And some of those cases are if the retail is in a low-income area, or it's some sort of mixed-use development, then we can continue to incentivize retail facilities. There were a bill passed that would authorize counties to use some transient room tax money for destination development grants. That's important for our area as we're a highly tourism-driven area, where some of the TRT taxes that our county is collecting, they have a little broader terms of how they can now spend that money. And so overall, a pretty good legislative session. I don't feel like they did too much damage. There are always concerns for, continuing to allow local control. So I will continue to keep an eye out during the interim. The legislature meets on a monthly basis in their interim sessions, and along with Councilman Ivy, who sits on the Legislative Policy Committee, will keep an eye on what's happening during interim and how any of these bills that they work on throughout the year might affect our city. But like I said, it's $500 million for water. They also increased our education budget by about 9%. And a lot of that was to go toward the per pupil funding, but also to offer some bonuses and raises for our teachers. So I think that our teachers in the community will appreciate that. But I'm happy to answer any questions.
So I have a question on HB 60. Just
Yes.
wondering why that didn't pass. What changed once it got out of the House?
So in the Senate committee, that bill was actually substituted. And the substitute, the House sponsor, who was Walt Brooks from St. George, he felt like that substitute took some of the teeth out of the bill and made it actually less meaningful of a bill. It removed the employer-employee relationship from the bill that he thought was important, that a worker should not lose their job over their vaccination status. The legislature, they ran out of time to bring that bill up in the Senate for a vote on the Senate floor. Any bill that doesn't receive a hearing or a vote by midnight on the 45th day automatically dies. And so I've spoken with Representative Walt Brooks, and he has every intention to bring that bill back. He feels it's important, and it passed so overwhelmingly in the House that he's going to work through some of the issues that those who substituted the bill have during the interim, and hopefully bring a bill back that can gain more consensus.
Really appreciate the update on that. Further questions?
I just want to share my appreciation for your help. There's a lot going on at the Capitol, and I think the city had great foresight to add Jordan to the staff so that we can keep an eye on those things. The one thing that resonated with me, Jordan and the rest, is that when you're on the Capitol, you hear one thing that repeats itself that concerns me, and it says, if the cities won't make the hard decisions, we will. So that's, in their minds, that's what's giving them the right or the desire to move out and take away some of the city's responsibilities. Well, I think that we have a much better understanding of what we need here than the state does. And so we do have to be out in front of that and let them know we are engaged in making the hard decisions. But those hard conditions are just that. And sometimes it takes some work to get there, but just appreciate your efforts on that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan. All right, we'll move along to item number 3, accessory dwelling units. Councilman Brett Henderson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to maybe get a little bit of an idea of what you guys, what your thoughts are on this, and I'll kind of tell you, how this came about, that I'm become interested in this. So I'm building a couple of houses right now that have accessory dwelling units, and one of them is an attached dwelling unit, one of them is detached. So I've gone through the process with the different municipalities of that. And then as I've been thinking about affordable housing, of course, we've been all talking about affordable housing. I don't know how much you guys are aware of how much apartments cost, but right now in the St. George area, Washington area, a 2-bedroom apartment can be $1,200 to $1,500. I mean, it is just really expensive. And so we have a lot of young couples especially, young people that can't afford a place, older people that may, older singles on a fixed income. A lot of people are having trouble finding a place to live for a decent price. Anyway, so as I've been thinking about this, I'm wondering if there's any interest in maybe updating our accessory dwelling unit ordinances in Washington. And so I've gone over St. George's. St. George kind of revamped theirs in November of 2021, just this last November. And what they're doing over there doesn't mean we have to do it, but it's just, and I've printed it off for you, but they are allowing both attached accessory dwelling units and detached accessory dwelling units up to 800 square feet. And they're allowing those to be rented out now. And that was, their big change.
Councilman, can I interrupt?
Yes.
We've traditionally called them attached and detached. The latest law is calling them internal and external.
Okay.
Just in case if you hear those two words, they're the same thing. Attached is internal, detached is external.
Okay, perfect. And Thad, if I, misstep here, please feel free to correct me. Anyway, so, the two that I'm building for, their intention is for their in-laws to live in them, but, I've learned that, these municipalities will allow you to rent those now as of November. But anyway, so ours is, has some similar language in it. And there's some stipulations, like, the primary residence has to be lived in by the property owner for this to work, or they can also live in the accessory dwelling unit as well, but they have to live on site. And there's some other stipulations and things, but how it compares to ours is, ours we allow up to 650 square feet, but it's for families only, no renting. So I'm just thinking
And ours is only for external.
only for external.
Yeah, we don't have an internal dwelling unit ordinance as of yet.
How do they even handle an internal? I mean,
That's
how do you?
that's where it gets hard. That's why we have the owner must live there, because we basically say if the owner's willing to let them move in, then as a city we'll trust that the owner is making good decisions, right?
And then they have some design guidelines too on the internal ones, that are there, and they're pretty good. I've read the ordinance a couple of times and I kind of like it, but I'm just wondering, in light of the housing shortage for affordable housing, is this something that we want to look at possibly changing on our ordinance? I'm thinking there's probably a couple hundred casitas out there that are just not being used, right now. I know in my neighborhood, there's a bunch of them up in the Green Springs area. Do we want to tweak the ordinance a little bit to allow people to rent them out? Maybe it would help, maybe we could have some rentals out there that were $800 a month instead of $1,200 for people. I don't know. I'm just looking for your feedback. For me, where I'm at on it, I think it might be a good move. I would be for it,
So last legislative session, they passed HB 82, it's the accessory dwelling unit ordinance or bill. And my understanding is that an accessory dwelling unit can be rented on a longer basis than 30 days.
That's correct.
That's what you understand?
Yeah.
It has to be rented over 30 days, or then it falls under the overnight rental provision.
Right.
Okay.
And Councilman Ivey, I think we have to recognize that the legislature is looking at accessory dwelling units every session right now. And so I think what Councilman Henderson is suggesting might keep us on par or ahead of the legislature, because the legislature is worried about affordable housing too. And so they just passed last session an accessory dwelling unit law, and we can expect that there will be future bills about accessory dwelling units.
Well, I love the idea that if there's space and there's people that could utilize that space, they need to be able to. Of course, there's provisions you have to consider, but um, I appreciate you bringing this forward. I think it's something that we always have to be aware of ways that we can accommodate people that needs places to live. The shortage is real, and we need to do all we can. So,
Councilman, can I share a personal story?
Yes.
So when I was a student at BYU, and again, you'll all recognize Provo had a housing crisis in association with its universities. And the Provo City Council approved an internal accessory dwelling unit. We called it the basement law, but allowed homes within a certain proximity of the university to retrofit their basements and rent them out. And so as a newlywed, I was able to live there with my wife at an affordable rate. In exchange for the affordable rate, I was also asked to maintain 125 rose bushes. But we had a great affordable living as newlyweds, and we improved the neighborhood because they asked me to maintain the roses too. And so I think that that's an example from a couple decades ago caused by their university that reflects the challenge we face today, which is we know that there's a need. How do we address it?
So I appreciate that. I think it's a great thing. When we brought this ordinance back a couple of years ago, I think it was before we were on council. It was right before. I remember seeing it in planning commission, I guess. And my concern was that it was like baby steps, right? Like baby steps. We didn't want to just full open. So I appreciated the staff saying, hey, let's just baby step into this, and maybe we're to the next step where we need to deal with it. I think we're definitely in a crisis. I'm looking at it as long as we're looking at all aspects and not being too stringent, because if all of a sudden we're allowing a bunch of dwelling units on one thing, and then all of a sudden the parking's an issue and you have a street that can't handle it, or they don't have enough driveway space, and then you get neighbors that complain that say, hey, I didn't build here to have an apartment complex next to me. We just got to be cognizant of that.
So on that point, Provo required there be a separation between the upstairs and the downstairs. So they required that the owners build in a physical barrier. They did check on parking, like you just mentioned. They required that there be parking spaces available off-road in addition to just street side. I think Drew would reflect this statement next is if we're going to work on Councilman Henderson's idea, I think we would want to make sure that it be longer term rentals, because that's really, we're not looking for any more vacation destinations. We're looking for places for people, say newlyweds, to be able to live for a year or two or three comfortably, well, but also to move them along the chain of where we're going.
So Thad, the bill also mentioned, like what you just said, that a private university with a student population of at least 20,000, well, it doesn't reside in our boundary, but it definitely, we see the effects, right?
If I may just tag on, I know you had a good experience. I've got one just because we need to share everything. I had an aunt and uncle living in Mesa, Arizona. One of the most gorgeous it was like a 22 lot subdivision, almost a long cul-de-sac. And I remember going down in high school and visiting them. I just loved their neighborhood. It was gorgeous. It had a tree lined street, everything. It's just one of those perfect, kind of neighborhoods like the old Center Street in Provo looked at, at the time. Came back after my mission, and they had a for sale sign. I just was stopping out of the blue to see them, and they had a for. I said, "What are you guys selling for?" They said, "Well, did you notice when you came in?" I said, "Yeah, there's a lot of cars here." They said, "Our neighborhood has gone from what we, all planned on originally, and now every home except for 2 of those 22, and they were one of them, were the only ones who did not have a place in the backyard." And what they turned into, and so the whole neighborhood just got. And then as I'm leaving, all of a sudden I'm realizing how inundated the subdivision had gone. I'm just giving you another case scenario, what can happen, like what we talked about if we get too many, but if you give it to one, it's to everybody. And so, and I just have that example. I know it can happen because I saw my aunt and uncle leave what they, planned on. It was just their dream home and everything was gorgeous about it. And then after so long, they just couldn't do it anymore. Because there was double families at every except for 2. At 20 of those lots had double residences, basically. They might have been smaller.
And I think the key, though, is that you have the current resident have to live there.
They all lived there. It was, even if it was all their neighbors.
I like that aspect of our ordinance right now is that, hey, it's not, hey, I own a rental property and I'm renting that out, and now I get to rent out the casita. It's
I know, and that's the state law requires that, which I like about that, but that was detached ones. The internal one, right now, the state hasn't touched it yet on the detached. Now I will point out though, Salt Lake, they opened this up a couple of years ago to do just this. They came back and looked at, did it help making it more affordable? No, all it did was made more the prices people were going to charge what they can get. I mean, I wish people would just say, you know what, I'm going to do it and help people out and keep my rent fixed at this. But unfortunately, 98% of the people are not going to do that. They're going to charge the hilt of what they can. I had a lady renting a room up at the villas at the end of Green Spring, a bedroom, because she fit under the family definition. It was her and her son in there, and she was renting a room out, $1,000 for a room that didn't have anything but a bathroom, a closet, a walk-in closet, and the bedroom. And it's not a very big bedroom, $1,000 that she was getting out of that place, because people will charge whatever they can get the most money out of.
I agree with that, and I would, not fault anybody for charging as much as they could, but there is the law of supply and demand.
Yep.
Which, runs the economy. So if we do add another 200 little rental units, the law of supply and demand means that
mine's
keep
going
the
to stay
prices
empty if I
low.
don't beat the next guy, and it does help bring price down.
It does, yeah.
But that's, I'm just throwing, I don't mind, the thought of where we're going, because it does help, but there's always the other side of the moon, the dark side of the moon.
And
think
the Provo experiment had exactly that, right? The tree streets became what used to be a kind of a quiet, full of professors neighborhood with not much traffic, became a neighborhood full of professors and young families and kids on the sidewalk. And yeah, there was more traffic, more cars because of the nature of what they did. So I think that Drew's points are right on point, is the natural effect of making changes is going to change.
But we got to think about how many. I mean, there are lots that we have in Washington that could handle a casita but any of the new subdivisions, you're not. Most of those are so tight, you're not getting those unless they're planned into it already. We
Plus
would be
the new
talking about the existing or the
Yeah.
older subdivisions.
Plus, the new subdivisions have CC&Rs that would, if you go into, a newer, more upscale subdivision, they're going to have CC&Rs that prevent you from doing this, So, there's that aspect of it too. So I can't imagine, up in some of the subdivisions in Green Springs, we're going to have hundreds of young families up there. It's just not going to happen, but it would give people that have a larger lot that's not in a HOA the opportunity to, now at least the St. George ordinance, they restrict it to one, and they restrict the size, and that would help so you don't have 10 families living on one lot. But I
They
think
also did they put a deed restriction in theirs, because the state law
yes, they
says you
did.
can,
Yes.
to where, it says that it has to, can only be this for any
Yes.
future.
Yeah,
people doing
it does
So,
have that. But anyway, I think it's something to think about. It would give, maybe alleviate a little bit of the pressure on rentals. There's not a whole lot the city can do, I don't think. It's kind of more of a market-driven thing. But there are a few things that we could do, and I think this might be one simple thing we could do to at least help a little bit. And I can't imagine that everybody in Washington City is going to have a casita in 2 years if we do this, but there would be some that would take advantage of it.
Well, just to note, I've probably only handed out less than 10 building permits, and it's been 2 years since when you guys came on the council, the three of you, I think that December right before it is when that got passed, that accessory dwelling unit. So it's been 2 years and some months, and I've had, again, maybe eight or 10 of them, but people have pulled permits on an accessory dwelling. Now, we've always allowed people to have a casita in the house, as long as it was attached to the home and it didn't change up the character of the home. And even the state law addressed that. You can't change the character looking of the home. So you couldn't have a front door here and a front door over here, for those. They'd have to make it look like it's all part of the primary dwelling unit, which I appreciated they did on that. So,
It creates a kind of a conundrum for living space as well, because you can't qualify for a home for a $1,400 payment, but you can pay rent for $1,400.
Mhm.
And so that creates that dynamic too that always weighs into this discussion.
Yeah.
Chief, did you have something to add?
I was just going to share some of the same concerns that were already brought up with parking noise and just, obviously when this past 2 years ago, there was the lot size and it can only be so much bigger than the actual primary residence. But if we're just being open-minded about it and when we move forward, then I think that's great. So it is something that deserves discussion because we do need to get creative. My kids aren't old enough to move out yet, but this is going to be hard for them to do when trying to afford something local anyway. So this is a good option to consider.
So Chief, there is another challenge to this as well, in that, this law also prohibits the city from if someone creates an accessory dwelling unit under that pretext and then they decide to short-term rental, it's really difficult to identify those because we actually are prohibited in using online apps or those sources to be able to identify them.
Right.
And so then a lot of those negative things has to come back through your department and through Drew's department
Complaint driven.
for us to try to identify what those are, because it's really hard if someone's going to overnight rent an ADU. You have a lot of those problems where if someone is going to live there for over 30 days, which is the intent of the law, that they're going to be better citizens and better neighbors. So we understand that challenge as well, Chief.
They made a law that they can't go on like those apps and look
That's
for these-
correct.
Yeah.
It specifically states that you cannot use any of those apps to enforce. Like you could just go on and say, here's the list, and these are the ones that actually have the building permit or the permitting the license to do it, but you cannot do that. It's specifically against the law.
So cities with proactive enforcement agencies on that would just go log into the app, search their zip code and say, here's our list for the week, right? And so, I don't have a problem with that. It's public information, but the legislature had a problem with that. This just reflects the lobby that supports rentals, right? They had enough traction with the legislature that there's a law that says cities that enforce, it must be complaint driven, not just market search.
So you new council members, you might find this interesting, but when we were at the Capitol lobbying HB 82 and trying to identify our concerns as a city, which a lot of things that Chief's mentioned and that Drew's mentioned, but the real problem was that I didn't realize I was being frustrated, and this lobbyist took me aside and said, okay, you're new at this. And I go, yeah, I'm trying though. And he goes, you have to understand that the legislators have these homes in Southern Utah that they own and they rent out. And so you're kind of climbing an uphill slope here.
It's called Sienna Hills.
Yeah, that's one of them.
Or
So it was
Coral
interesting.
Canyon, or
But it was interesting because I could understand why we would make these logical arguments and they just wouldn't go. So you have to understand the landscape as well.
now I will point out, I do love, there is one aspect that does help us, and it even helps code enforcement and our judge. If we go this route, you can put on the deed restrictions, these are prohibited. That's part of your deed restriction from short-term vacation rental. So they're recording that on their property, and then all of a sudden they turn around and start vacation rentaling it out because they came in under one pretense, but now they're doing the other. When you show up in court with that deed restriction, that this Joe homeowner here is the one who recorded that, it makes it a lot easier for prosecution. Right now, unfortunately, it's trying to get these people who have the illegal ones going is for some reason real difficult in the judicial side of everything.
It would
But
be
with the
difficult.
recorded deed restriction, by dang, at least we have that. That's a piece of solid evidence. They said, oh no, we were doing this for this. But yet then when they're going the other route, I think it's a lot easier for a judge to slam the gavel and say, you're guilty.
And it would be very difficult for a city to justify hiring somebody to go around and address the illegal rentals. It's really hard to justify that as well. And so then it comes back to complaint driven, which I think we've done a really great job. But a lot of those complaints come in at 3:00 in the morning on Easter weekend, and there's not even an adult on site. But then on Sunday morning or Monday, when people actually respond to it, all those folks have gone home,
They're gone.
where they
Yeah.
could have been underage, or which adds another level of complexity to it.
So I just wanted to point out, I'm glad they allow the deed restriction to be part of that, because then I think it's a lot more enforceable and has
Yeah.
teeth, where sometimes the teeth, you think we have enough teeth, but sometimes we're, the dentures are out and there's just gums left. So
I would be interested to find out from St. George City since November, have they had a real increase in applications for these, I mean, just to kind of give us an idea of what could be. So I don't know.
I appreciate this discussion, and I share a lot of Councilman Henderson's views on this. I've taken a couple of calls just in my neighborhood, and individuals with children who are growing up and getting married, and they have nowhere to live, and they've reached out and said, can we do this in our yard? They have the bigger lots, they have the means to do it, and it's been difficult to navigate. And you think, where do these young marrieds get a start? Where do they live? And so you recognize that, like most issues, there's two sides to it. There's the positive effects and there's the negative effects. I think what I'd like to do is, Councilman Henderson, is just kind of ask where you'd like to go from here and kind of take the temperature of the council, and maybe even throw out the idea of, do we want this discussion to continue on maybe in the Planning Commission, which is a body that you oversee, and start having some discussion on that? Or would you rather have that discussion here, or hold off from it? I'd just kind of like to get your views and then take the council's temperature on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see the discussion happen. I'd like to, I like St. George's ordinance. I think it's well written. I think it's got some protections in there. But I would be in favor of something similar to this, but maybe tweaked to meet our needs here in Washington. But I'd like to move forward and, see if it's something that everybody would like to do. I'd like to, if it was up to me, I would make a change. So.
Councilman, the one thing that we have in our favor is we have some experience now. When those short-term rentals first came about, there was a lot of information, some incorrect information, but we've learned from our own experiences. And so that's why I think that this can have great success, is because I think I can speak for myself, is that recognize the need for housing, but we also have experience from some negatives. And so I think we can bring those together and create a great ordinance that fits us, takes care of some of our concerns, some of the negative impacts maybe to citizenry, but yet I do recognize the absolute need to address the housing and make it available to those that need it, for sure.
I agree.
I've already expressed, I think I would be supportive of moving forward with it also. I do like how the St. George has the owner occupant lives on the property, because I feel like, having the owner there, they're going to be more particular about, who's going to be living with, on their property, and they'll be able to take care of their property, and just, there's good people who live here that care about our community, and so they'll do the right things to make sure that their property and their neighborhood stays nice. And so I think I'm supportive of having more conversations and moving forward with it as well.
You heard my thoughts. Those are just ideas. I'm all about moving forward.
Would you like to have that conversation happen amongst the council, or would you like to let it get some traction among the Planning Commission?
The Planning Commission, they've got some members on there that are very smart, much smarter than me probably. So I would love to get their input, and they're very sharp. They know their stuff, and I would love to get some input from them. So.
I appreciate that, and I like to put our land use experts and put that commission, that body to work. And so I think we've heard that we're supportive of that. Do we know if Councilmember Martinson has made it online?
Mayor, while we're checking, it may be also advantageous to have Chief Williams and Drew share, maybe if they have an email or a detail of their concerns, so that as they work that through the Planning Commission level, that they would be aware of these. They may not be as aware as maybe what we are.
So I am getting message here that Councilmember Martinson is online. I'm not sure where or how to access him.
Around.
but he's here.
Yep, I'm here.
Go ahead, Councilman. Your thoughts on this?
Yeah, this was one of my biggest frustrations while on planning commission was these accessory dwelling units, and it's become more of a need. You hit the nail on the head, right? Where do these young marrieds go? And so I'm in favor of moving forward and letting the planning commission they've got the experience with it. They're super smart individuals. Let's let them run with it and present to us.
Perfect. Thank you, Councilman Martinson. Appreciate you joining us. Is there anything else, Councilman? Or I think it's pretty good. Great. Thank you for bringing that up. And appreciate your preparation on that. Appreciate this discussion and feedback from the council and from staff. It's good discussion. Let's move on to our last agenda item. This is a continuation of our discussion of the landscape conservation ordinance. We'll look to our city attorney, Thad Sigmuller, to bring some of the updates and exhibits that have been asked by this body. And I'll just give a reminder that we do have a hard stop at 5:30.
What time is it now, Mayor?
Close to 4:40.
But you don't have to take the whole
So
time.
saying I got 50 minutes.
Food's no, he's just saying you don't have 51. He's just clarifying for you.
I feel like we've spent a lot of minutes on this ordinance already, so I'm hoping we don't spend 50 more. But if necessary, I'm happy to be here as long as the council would like. I'm trying to connect my device so I can show the map. And this is my first time connecting to council room. Oh, there's a passcode for it. I'm trying to remember what that is. Thank you. I wish all passcodes would come up on the screen when I need them. That's really convenient.
Surrounded by good people.
So I'm pulling up the exhibit that is in your packets. So Councilman Martinson can see that. Councilman Martinson. The one thing Councilman Martinson can't see is the handout I gave to you. The reason I handed it out in person is page 2. Page 2 correlates the data we see on this exhibit with a physical address and with culinary water data from our utility office. And we're just trying to treat this as confidential, protected, private information. So that's why it wasn't in your packet. That's why I've marked it confidential. If you'll respect that. It's not necessarily my concern as it is just folks that might own these properties. If somebody really wanted to link a lot of details, they could probably learn more than we would disclose publicly. I want to start on page 1 though, because the legislature's over. Page 1 is a legislative update. Again, there's hundreds of bills at the legislature. I wanted to list for you the specific laws and then the purpose that show that the legislature is also working on conservation ordinances and amendments. And so we're not the only ones doing this. It's a lot easier to accept a small milkshake when your mom's also buying a small for your sister. And so that's kind of the message here is we're not the only government that's trying to tighten our belts. So you'll see House Bill 39. This is an amendment to the state construction codes. It amended the residential code and the plumbing codes to essentially regulate the flows of shower heads and toilets. You may have heard that during the legislature they were talking about mandating water sense type fixtures. This is the way they're accomplishing that. Is they're not saying you have to use water sense, but they're saying you've got to use a shower head that meets the water sense specification. Same as the toilets. I anticipate we'll see more of these type amendments in future sessions as the legislature just starts to regulate water use and water using steps. Did you have a comment, Jeremy? House Bill 121, the water conservation amendments. This is the state imposing upon its buildings and its facilities. Any new state projects are required to conserve. They put a limit of no more than 20% lawn on new constructed projects. I shared that because we're talking percentages a little bit in ours, and so I just wanted to see what the state did. They also mandated outdoor water use reductions on all state facilities, new or existing, of 5% by 2023 and 25% by 2026. And so again, that's a element that they imposed on themselves, on their facilities. They made, and Jordan mentioned this, they made available $5 million in funding. In this specific law, the funding is to incentivize turf removal on private lawns or within state properties. They've imposed upon themselves mandatory watering schedules, mandatory smart irrigation systems that have, storm shut-offs and leak detection shut-offs. And so they've imposed on themselves a number of the same type of categories that we're considering. House Bill 242, secondary water metering amendments. This is an interesting one because the law only applies to piped systems. And so our city requires piped systems in all the new, that's just a dry system at this point. But we also have a traditional system that's got both open ditch and piped. This bill exempts open ditch from requiring metering. Our challenge in our traditional system is there are some that receive a pipe service all the way to their house. And under this law, in theory, because it's a pre-existing connection, it's not a new connection, but at some point they're phasing in that all piped connections will need meters. And so I'm sure our public works folks will analyze this and will come up with some solutions. But again, it's the state starting to regulate things that are going to impact how we do business here at Washington. House Bill 282, water-wise landscaping. This is the bill that says cities and counties and HOAs cannot require inefficient use. And so they're basically saying HOAs can't require irrigated turf in park strips. Cities can't require irrigated turf in inefficient places. And so it's a kind of a double negative, but they're making sure that we aren't allowed to require water waste.
So does that go into like when we say, hey, we want this area to be like the detention pond grass, we can't require it now?
It's not that specific yet. This is really just looking at, the way they wrote it is you can't prohibit xeriscaping, you can't prohibit water. They wrote it to say you cannot prohibit water conservation landscaping, but what that really means is we can't require irrigated grass in park strips. We can't require water use using landscaping in certain scenarios. And so we're not there yet, but I think that this trend will continue in future sessions.
And we've always looked at those as are they usable? If it's a usable, that's a detention. Because example, we have a townhome with a detention, and that's the only area for the kids to play. We got to have some grass.
Yeah.
So
and we've done the same thing with our areas that are open space or bonus density. We'd rather that be usable than just open density with a density bonus that then just collects trash bags as they blow through, right? We'd rather they be usable than not. And so no, they're not disallowing that at this point. The way it's written is you can't disallow efficient use either. And so if they come in and say, hey, we want to put cacti and local plant species that are drought resistant, we can't disallow that. Neither can an HOA, neither can a county. I think you'll see this type of a concept expand with future legislative sessions. The last one on there, Senate Bill 110. As we know, we have general plans and we update them because the state law requires us to. And so this one is regulating the state law requirements about general plans, and what it's requiring is that we consider water consumption and water conservation within our general plans. And as a obvious connection to that, anytime that we're discussing a general plan change or modification as a legislative body, we're required to consider water conservation. And so we see these fairly regularly. Somebody comes in that wants to do something with a piece of land that maybe is not in conformance with the general plan, and they want to come and ask to amend the general plan.
So Thad, does 110 also identify new sources?
New sources
of water, new sources, wells?
It doesn't require it. It requires that we have that.
It doesn't
conversation.
identify it in 110. Okay.
Not yet, but
Thank you.
But yeah, so this is for the legislative body as they consider a legislative action of what do we do with the general plan and this specific property. If somebody's coming in saying, I want to amend the general plan, and they are bringing a water using proposal, we as a legislative body could say, we think you need to bring water with your proposal because it's impacting our system in a way that we don't have the water to facilitate with what you're doing. And so it gives us the right to essentially, if they're not bringing water, we can tell them, look, we can't approve it. right? But it gives you a statutory basis as a legislative actor to decide whether that application proposal is compliant with state law. Anyway, so just a couple of specific ones. If I'm sure that you'll get questions from the media and residents about, state law, and those are specific ones that I think you'll see a number of those are similar to what we're trying to do in our ordinance.
Good question, really fast.
Huh?
So when we approve of a property or, a development, we're not guaranteeing them water right now. They have to, or are we?
That's
Or
a
is
really
that-
good question.
Is that not?
So if we start at the beginning and somebody has empty land that they want to make use of, the first thing that gets vested is just land use rights. So they come in and let's say it's an open space, they want to zone it to a residential zone. The first right that gets vested from this body is a right of land use, which would be whatever residential zone you approve. At some point, when they start making applications to the city, and most of this becomes administrative, let's say for a grading permit or a building permit, at some point, there's an assumption that our approval of those permits includes the city allowing them to connect to our culinary system once we've inspected and signed off on them. And so when exactly does the right to water vest? There's not a specific date. It's not at zone change. It's probably when we approve their building permit.
Can I just add a little to that? It's a really insightful question, and I think we're starting to see some developers even ask for will serve letters, meaning they want some assurances, or their financing company wants some assurances, and so it's an ongoing discussion, and the question of vesting is a hot topic right now.
Yeah, it'll probably be litigated someday if things continue as dry and as hot on the growth side as they have been. So water keeps becoming scarce and houses keep becoming plentiful. That'll probably be a question that's worth litigating for developers someday.
Now, if you can just litigate more water, that would be great.
I'll just tell them, you guys can bring water or we can litigate for 6 years. Take your pick. No, I think the building department, I'm not trying to make the building industry sound negative. I think that a lot of what they build is already compliant with the code that we're passing, and so they've been ahead of the law, and I think they're trying hard to recognize that water is scarce, and so I think they should be considered our partners in this, but sometimes the nature of business, of development, you need a legal question to be answered, and that might come up. Any other questions on the law, the kind of legal update there? There's only like 300 other laws that were passed, so we'll get those to you at some point.
Only if they affect us. I don't need the ones that don't
Only if they affect you. Well, all laws affect you, Councilman Coates.
I'm saying personal. No, I'm just
Okay.
kidding.
So the next section is data that Councilman Coates requested. And you probably are going to feel like I am just burying you in data, which I hope you are, because this was a fascinating project. And I hope you see that there's just more data than I even really know how to interpret. But I think it's the exact type of data that can help a legislative body decide what's appropriate for their community.
So I got a quick question for you. So on this confidential document that you sent us, does this correlate with the maps?
Correct. So your page one on the map, so page one up there correlates with page one column here.
Okay.
And I'm not going to point out the house numbers,
that's fine.
but you can kind of figure it out as you look.
I just wanted to make sure that I was clear that we were correlating with this, because I wrote down my numbers on the size, square footage of use.
Yep.
So
you probably already assembled this almost
kind
in
of
your
did.
preparation.
And
You'll notice
the blue is pools. If you see the ones that are highlighted in blue, those are homes with pools.
Yeah, so if you look at your first page, you'll see pools on the image, and then you'll see on the data, the highlighted blue is those properties. And GIS did a wonderful job. If you look at this, the nature of what they've measured and provided to us is really quite fascinating. We start the smaller size lots. You'll notice these ones are in the 9s, next ones are in the 6s. And so we start small and kind of move big was the concept. We started with the idea of let's just go pick one house and provide it. But we realized, you know what, a macro view is probably more useful on this. And so we try to just get you a macro view of various types of residential neighborhoods. And so we hope that that gives you a better way to just digest what you're seeing. So you'll see here on the first one, we've got lot sizes around the 9,000s. And so you can know from your residential zone categories which zone designation that probably is, somewhere R110 or lower, right? You'll see the square footages of the grasses and the pools. If you look at the data page, there's a couple of things that are easy to notice. You'll notice on that data, there's one that's a really high outlier in its usage. So usage is the far right column. That number is in the thousands. So if you take the top one, their monthly average on an annual basis is 19,000 gallons.
There's one that's 38,000.
That's the outlier. And if you look at the map, that one doesn't appear to have any uses that should seem excessive. And so that's either an example of why metering and leak detection can help us find uses, or
let me back up. Is this just 1 month
no, this is 12 months. This is the prior 12 months.
average?
Yes.
Okay.
And so I have the full 12 months data. If you'd like it, I didn't print it, but I've got it so you can see.
I just wanted to make sure we weren't taking like January's numbers when
Yeah, this
I like the 12 month.
This has a spring, fall, summer, and winter all in there. And all of them have the cycle as you'd expect, peaking in the summer. But to me, that outlier is an example of either we need mechanisms to help find leak detection, or we need education to help them realize that watering their lawn twice a day isn't necessary, right? Because from the imagery, there doesn't appear to be anything about that lot is exceptionally different than all the neighbors. The other thing you'll notice is the pools, and you remember Councilman Coates and others, we had a lot of discussion of whether pools change usage. The pool lots don't appear to be outliers. And that was a trend that surprised me throughout all of the data. The lot size seems to be a bigger driver of consumption than whether it's a pool and a lawn. And so, any questions about that grouping?
And I think as we looked at that, it's because the pools tend to take up space that would otherwise be lawn, and they're just not using the same amount of water as the lawn would use. So it's probably even a slightly better use if it takes up lawn. If it adds to the lawn, then that's probably not a good thing.
And you're accounting that because typically they have a concrete slab around them, and it's not just the pool area that's being taken up.
That's right.
So you'll see in our last few groupings where the lots are a lot bigger, the pools get bigger, the lawns get bigger, and the consumption gets bigger, obviously, right?
But even this house that's on the top of this, it has, grass, 2,200 square feet of grass and a 562 square foot pool, and it's still only using 12,000 gallons a month. So they can certainly be a good water conserver, even with a decent amount of lawn and a pool. So I don't know what makes that happen, but it trends throughout the data.
But I think it goes to education, because you look at the one house that's in that one that's using 38,000 gallons. There's definitely a use concern on that house. And apparently it's not a concern to them, or else they'd be asking the city, why is my bill so much, or whatever. It's not a thing there.
And if you look, that house has 902 in the front, 939 in the back. So it's got almost 1,900 square feet of grass and other plantings. It's the third on the top, third from the left on the top, right? So that house isn't, it's not exceptionally, there's other houses with more grass using less water. And so yeah, it's either systematic.
But we got to be careful though, because we can't gaze at its lawn. What if it's just use? What if it's indoor use?
That's our other challenge. We don't know for sure.
It's hard, right? Because
it could be a running toilet.
Yeah, it could be that, or it could be.
It's hard to use 38,000 gallons indoors.
Maybe they take a lot of baths every night. I don't know. I'm just saying,
There's some people that take 3 baths a day.
Yeah, so this
might be that person.
That's the hard thing, is we don't have an irrigation meter. We have a use, and so you don't know what they use. What if they run what if they run a home business and they have to fill up their water tanks every morning or something? I don't know. I'm just throwing that. That could be why it's an outlier, or some other reason besides irrigation, though.
Yep.
So I just wanted to throw that out there.
No, I think you're exactly right, and so we can address the education side, right? And the water district is going to be our partner in that. we can address the systematic side, leak detection and things like that. At some point, our rate structure will just address the heavy usage side too. I think we'll be forced to have a rate structure that says, once you've kind of crossed what we think is the residential kind of need per month, once you're getting into the just luxury use, I know the district and the state recommend that our rate structures start to increase on luxury type use. And so that, to me, that's where we catch all of those councilman codes. We don't have that rate structure specifically yet, although it's a little bit like that right now. But that's where we kind of do the catch-all on all the other usage.
Do you know how many gallons per month our rate structure increases? Do you know, is it 36 or
Who remembers our rate structure perfectly? Lester?
36,000?
Do you remember where the tiering cuts off?
Based on meter size, and it's the first 5,000, and then we tier up from there. But for standard residential, it begins at the 5,000 mark.
What?
I could pull that up real quick.
But looking at this, on the average, no one's even close to 5. So you're saying that that's just the first rate, and then anything after that, it gets.
Then we start tiering it
Increasing.
up, and the cost per thousand goes up on a tiered structure. And then the one you were bringing up with the 36,000, that's the proposed penalty rate per thousand that the district is implementing. Is anything beyond the 36,000 in any month
Gets the higher
additional-
double or
an
whatever,
additional dollar
whatever
per
it is.
thousand on top
Yeah.
of the already tiered structure.
Okay.
So basically the brakes are at every 5,000 gallons,
Right.
but they don't go up enough to make a difference really that a resident would see. So 74 cents for the first 5,000 for each 1,000 gallon up to 5, then it goes to 86, 98. So you're paying 12 cents more per thousand. It's just not enough.
But that's
See
per
a
thousand,
huge-
and say your average is, say you're at 12 or 10. I mean, that's a couple dollars. I mean, it's really
yeah,
not.
keep in mind this is on a month by month basis, not on a year-long average basis.
Yeah, so you're going to pay those higher rates in the
Even the
in summer.
38,000, it's not going to be a number that you go, whoa, what did I spend all this water on? It's,
Well, and
it's
even
not tiered that high that it.
yeah, and even at that, even at the 38,000 on the average scenario, the reality is they would have been in probably around the 45,000 range during the summer months. So the reality is it's $10 additional above and beyond what they're already used to. That's not enough to really
Yeah, that's good to know.
affect consumption. Good job.
I would expect that at some point, as we keep drilling into conservation, we'll have Lester and we'll be talking about those strata in much more detail.
Has the district, I'm just asking the question, have they thought about like just an automatic fee? Like if you hit this rate, it's automatically $50 or $25. I'm just wondering if that discussion's.
We don't want them to think too much about automatic fees. We feel like there's enough of those.
So they've had some discussion about hitting a surcharge on our customers. And I think generally we don't like that idea. I like the district to be a wholesaler, not
I'm not saying
hitting our customers with, but we can look at different tiers that help our customers to see the usage. if
Yeah,
that makes sense.
and
I think I'd rather we do it internally.
I agree with you. I'm just wondering if there's been discussion about that.
There has.
Because I'm just sitting here like, and I'm talking excessive users, right? Like the ones that are way above our average. Like if we hit that number, whatever that number is, I mean, you're not going to notice $10. You're going to notice if $50 hits, all of a sudden you're like, why is it $50 more than it should be? But
They've talked about adding a surcharge for that reason, just so it really lets people know that there's a problem.
and I kind of look at it as like, if you forgot to pay your credit card bill, right? You're going to get hit with that penalty. It's kind of a penalty for hitting over the allowed usage. So
I think it was Councilwoman Casperson a few weeks ago that mentioned, letting the market control some of this. And I think I had a response, well, it's, there's a level. I think that Jeremy and I would agree that at some point rate structure is the best way to impact behavior with water. But there's kind of a level of how much do we want to not leave up to the market so that we aren't impacting, the retired person on a fixed income. And so the council will get to wrestle with those type of questions in the future, I'm sure. Unless we become a tropical neighborhood like we were a couple million years ago. But I don't think that's happening. So this is page 2 of the exhibit in your packet. The thing you'll notice here, I think the first 2 lots, starting from the left to right, you'll notice the left one with that large chunk of grass, and these are 6,000 square foot lots. So it's got over 1/6 of it, 1/10 of it in lawn. Its usage is half of the lot next door with a pool and very little landscaping, right? And so again, usage is not always explained by everything, but that really informs a lot of the discussions we've tried to figure out here in the council room of, pond, grass, pool, what's really going to change this? There you got a big lawn next to a small pool, and the small pool's double the usage. Both are still within the kind of monthly target of 12,000 gallons or less, though. And so this is a good example here with these 6,000 to 7,000 square foot lots. The lot size just seems to bring down total monthly usage. And I think it's just because there's less places to use your water. That's really the correlation there. And that's probably the biggest correlation. You'll see in there 3 out of the 5, a couple different sizes of pools. And another thing that I think is easy to observe here is people do want something in their yard that's water using, right? And so even if we're trying to conserve, I think that they're gonna want some water use in their yard. Folks still want some of that. And these are fairly modern lots as well. These aren't 20-year-old lots. These are built more recently.
So just for the council's information, I quickly ran the math and I just added up all the square footage of lawn and everything and divided by those 5 houses, it's 743 square feet for a 6,000 square foot lot.
That's an average.
That's an average. So just
how does that compare to our chart?
Well, the problem with our chart is our chart starts at
9
and it doesn't go down.
So what's 743 over 6,000? Although I guess you got one 7,000 square foot lot on there.
Well, it's 6,000. Oh, it's 12%.
So the state did a 20%, no more than 20% grass on themselves. So that would be a 12%, which is even lower than the state. But that's interesting. That's interesting data.
I want to say, if I remember right, correct me if I'm wrong, but I want to say that Santa Clara's ordinance used a percentage, and I wanted to say that their turf area was 8%. Does that sound right?
On new builds.
On new builds, yes.
And so there was, again, on a big lot, that could become a lot of turf.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they found that just a percentage across the board was what they wanted. Unless you had secondary water, then
But on these smaller lots, it would be more restrictive than what some of these are showing.
Yeah, 8% would be.
I'll give you one more thought. We met with Southern Utah Home Builders Association last week to receive some comments on this, and that was one of their comments, is that they liked that idea of a percentage with a cap. So you'd say it just makes it easy to say you can have this percent, and then it caps out at a certain size. So you don't have those 2-acre lots that have just a massive amount of turf. So that was their comment, and I think it's worth noting.
So I'm going to start scrolling through a little more quickly because I think you've all got the grasp as to what I gave you both online and in paper.
While we have that, can we go to the chart though?
Yeah.
Can we just jump to the chart since it's fresh on our minds? One thing I had is, and I like the idea of the percentage, but if we kept to the chart, I kind of thought we needed another tier. I thought like
lower or bigger?
Lower.
Okay.
And that's the 6 we have a lot of 6,000 square foot lots. And so I'm like, hey, maybe that's where our 750. That's why it fascinated me when I did it that it hit 743. So maybe 750 is that number for the 6,000, and it tiers a little different between them.
Yeah, I think we tried to start at R10, and I think your feedback's well taken. Start at R6 and do the same concept. Okay. Here we're up to 8,000 square foot lots. This one, again, the data is a house with no pool, or the highest user is a house with no pool, but you'll see over 1,000 square feet of grass. Houses are getting bigger also with the lot size. I also think this one reflects, you've got front, side, and backyards all landscaped, which is something that we've talked about possibly requiring in our ordinance. And you imagine, how's a city going to regulate the type of ordinance we're considering? Well, you can see where staff can look at this type of data and know who to talk to and who not to talk to, right?
You know, I find it interesting as we went to the water school last summer and we heard from the water manager in Henderson, and down there in the Las Vegas area, they do not allow grass in the front yard, period. And there's a stat, I wish I could remember it more accurately, but essentially they've removed enough turf, mostly from front yards, to circumvent the globe. And we're certainly not there, but just didn't I thought it was an interesting fact, is, you know, they're a little further ahead of us in building out in a desert climate, and I'm not saying that that's something that this council should consider now, but I find that interesting that that's their law, and they monitor every single yard.
Was that for existing homes too? They had to tear it out, or?
I don't remember that, Councilman Ivey. Do you remember if they?
I think it was
with
just new construction, but Mayor, what was interesting about that, and it's a great point, is that they also realized it raised the heat index, that it was creating more need for air conditioning.
I think you'll notice on most of the front yards, Mayor, that those are smaller grass pieces with irregular shapes, so they're more ornamental, less in use value and more in just, you know, let's look a little green. And maybe that could be accomplished with an artificial turf or some other green approach. Now we're up to 10,000 square foot lots. You'll see this is the first category where just about all of them are over. One of them is substantially under. When I say over, I'm looking at kind of the 12,000 per month average threshold. But again, the lots don't appear from the image to look that much more consumptive, but just the sizes are growing with the space on the lot. The pools are bigger, the lawns are bigger, and of course the houses are also getting bigger, and so you'll see the average consumption is increasing. I can see Councilman Coates crunching some numbers over there. Are you doing the same average for this grouping?
I'm doing them for all of them. So, on the 10,000, it's 1536. So
what percentage?
I don't know. Hold on. I'm in the midst
That's
of it.
okay. I'm not sure.
When we're done, when we get back to the table, I was going to see an outline.
I've expected that this is the type of data that council's going to digest much longer than just tonight. So I'll just keep moving through for time. Go to page 5, and you'll see here 12,000 square foot lots between 10 and 12. Again, house is getting bigger. You'll also notice that the grass seems, quite a bit bigger. As far as the grassed sections are getting larger, and you still have front and backyard, so it's expanding. And you'll see on the data, the high usage continues to grow with the size of the houses and the size of the lots. Page 6, you're up to 14,000, 15,000 square foot lots. You'll see this is our first 40,000 gallons per month average winner. That one has a lot of grass and a lot of pool. But you'll see throughout the same neighborhood, if you look at that data, there's some that are quite low in their use with a lot of grass and with some pool. And so again, I don't know how to distill a pool versus grass lesson out of this, but I think that there's lessons that the council can distill. And these are newer, really nice neighborhoods. Again, you'll see mostly fully landscaped. I don't think we've seen any house that has an unlandscaped portion yet, and they're all pretty modern. And so I'm not saying they were all fully landscaped at first occupancy, but they're clearly getting fully landscaped by the time Google flies over.
So this might start to hit the thought that we've had in some of the water meetings, that a lot of these lots now are taken care of by landscapers instead of maybe by an HOA, and there maybe isn't an incentive to put the right amount of water on. There's an incentive to make it look really green. And so I think you can see the difference. I mean, certainly in that one, you can see that some of them used 40 and the neighbor used 16, and it looks very similar. And it could really just be the amount of water that's being put on the lot. It could be that simple.
It's been really helpful for me to get the notifications from the Water Conservancy District, because it's something you don't think about. You just turn your water on, turn it off, it's made me a lot more aware, and that's really interesting. Landscapers really would take more time, and there's really no direct benefit for them to scale back on watering.
So to
As long as
further
it's green,
Jeremy,
they're getting paid, right?
to further Jeremy's analysis, you look at the upper three. The top left one is the highest user in that group and only has 1,297 square feet of grass. The top right is 3,020 square feet of grass and is the second lowest.
Well, and you got to look at the inside, because those houses are big and they have lots of bathrooms, I think that's the big effect.
Yeah, there's
we have-
elements that we can't control
Yeah.
with conservation ordinances. There just are. Grouping on page 7, again, these are becoming very large, 20,000 plus square foot lots. We didn't measure the upper lot there because that was just more grass than we even could measure. Yeah, that's not a city park, but it looks like one. But you'll see here, the numbers are getting, averaging on the double, triple of what we would like to see every single residential unit to kind of average at. And the only correlation is lot size expands houses and then landscape uses.
But those are outliers. Those are big houses.
Yeah.
I mean, I just finished the math, and it's 15,000.
So is the next one, right? These are
So you're on page 8.
Yeah.
So page 8, just so you know, page 8 had on average 4,000 gallons, or 4,000 square feet of lawn.
And if you do, you'll see the average. You'll see on the chart there, they're all about 4,000 square feet, right? And
Yeah, I'm just saying. But you go to the next one, it's 15,000. So it's just,
if you do the percentage of the lot size, that's probably within your chart still, is what I'm trying to say. And Santa Clara's approach, at some point, if you're going to have a percentage of lot size, you're going to see lawns get bigger, especially as you increase the lot sizes. And so, Councilman Coates, this was the data you requested. I really appreciate your request because it had both staff drilling down in and looking at data in a way we never have. I hope that council feels that you've been provided data in a way you never have. Pivoting to the ordinance, I still seek council guidance on when you want this to come back and what numbers you want to be in there when it does come back. And so I think there's a couple of categories that we would like some feedback on still. As to the chart, Councilman Coates said, keep the chart, add R16 on the top.
that was my thought before we started the discussion too. So just,
Okay.
if we jump, what page is that chart on?
And while he's looking for that page, I'll just, we had a conversation before the meeting started, and I know we're getting through the edits here, but can you just kind of define those areas of, the turf area, how that interacts with a pool area? We talked about water use with a car wash. What other particular definitions or details are you looking for from the council?
I think we're looking for detail on your turf chart and detail on your car wash consumption. And Jeremy, any other section that we're looking for detail on?
I think those are the two biggest, the turf and the car wash, that are still remaining. The pools is another thing that right now we have to look at. Other than that, we didn't get a lot of comment back. I think Suba was pretty pleased with where we were headed. It was good to give them an opportunity to comment. But those are really the three remaining. And if we could get some direction, we could probably bring something for the next meeting that looked closer to.
So can we start on the polls? So I'll just start. I really appreciate this data. This helped me a ton.
It was surprising.
And
really
it
was.
made me realize that maybe a pool's it's not equal.
Yeah.
And so I want to throw out there just for discussion. And I was thinking, if we had a square footage, say 1,000 for easy, that you could add an additional, 15% for pool area, if it makes sense, 15 or 20%. So say our max was 1,000 square feet based on that lot size, but you had 1,000 1,100 square feet with the pool and grass combined. Just a percentage on top of, because it's not as much, but I also think that it's nice to have a grass area with your pool, and I think it helps that. So I'm thinking just not a large amount, but what's this?
So you're saying something like, if your proposal includes an outdoor pool, your water consumption percentage can go to 115%.
No, I'm saying I'm basing it on square footage. So grass area.
Grass area.
Grass
I'm saying
area.
the grass area, if you have up to 1,000 feet, so you would just add, say it's 10%, it's at 100 square feet additional. So you could go to 1,100 if you have a pool and grass.
So if we include grass and pool in this chart, we just say, if it's just grass, you get 1,000. If it's grass and pool, you get
1,100.
100,
And then
110% of that.
But I just threw out that number as 10%,
Okay.
but that's my idea
I
of
was just
adding a
trying-
percentage.
So when we started this, there was not a section for pools that was brought by the Conservancy District, and we added it. I mean, if we wanted to be really easy, we could even just eliminate the pool discussion altogether.
No, but
we didn't see a huge correlation between the pool and water use.
But you're saying because it uses up the space anyways?
Because it's going to use up space that you can't now put grass on. The only place that's going to be an issue is on the really large lots, if they put in a really, really large pool. But we just didn't see a correlation of the consumption of the water with the pool. And granted, there were a lot of variables there, but I'm okay with either way. I'm just recognizing that we added that. It wasn't existing to begin with.
Plus with a pool, when you have a pool size, certain square footage, you probably have at least an equal amount of square footage of deck, which doesn't take any water. So I agree with Councilman Coates. I think we need to take that into consideration. And
Any direction from the
Probably.
council? Do you want us to? I'm okay removing pools because the data I see doesn't correlate to consumption in pools. It correlates to lot size and consumption and house size. But we can build in pool elements that are similar to what Councilman Coates said, some restriction, but also, doesn't treat them equally to irrigated grass.
One of the other things is the more simple we can make our code, the easier it is for the resident and for our staff to kind of enforce. And so I'm kind of looking at it from both directions.
Maybe you just say pools need to be built with water conserving technologies, right? And so you don't even talk about the size of the pool. You just say build it, according to conservation measures.
I would be okay with that too. I mean, I agree.
But should we
with
limit
you.
that to a size? Because I mean, you look
I
at this,
think we
you
could
get a 1 acre,
simplify it.
you get a 1 acre lot. I mean, I know we don't have a lot of them out there, right?
In the Olympic pool.
But I'm looking at this one. I'll just give you the percentages I got for pool and land. So the 1 acre lots, I mean, it's the outlier, but that's 34% of the lot is that. And you jump down to the 30,000 lots, which are still not, they're outliers. It jumps clear down to 14%. And then the average from the small lot to the big lot was basically 9% up to 20%. And it varied all over based on these subdivisions. So in my mind, it's, if we're doing a percentage, maybe we just do a percentage and it's pool and grass and you get this percentage. But we're also, these are existing and we're trying to tighten up a little bit too. So we got to take that into effect. So
Yeah.
I'm looking at all this data, we shouldn't go to 20. The 9,000 lot and the 21,000 lot was 20% based on pool and square footage of grass. So if we're trying to tighten and conserve, maybe it's 15% because that's the average. We had some down in the 9, we had some in 12, 18, like it was all over based on this. So maybe 15 is, or it's 16 and say you get 16% of your square footage. Pool, grass, whatever it is, you decide. Just throwing that out there.
So you would just have the percentage be top to bottom, because this chart is graduating lower. So the bigger lots get less percentage of grass than the smaller lots under this concept.
Well, you got a good point. And so maybe we should, I guess what I'm saying is from a 15,000 lot and lower, then we should be very similar. Is we could make it simple that way, or we could do a percentage based on each lot size. And then when they get bigger lots, we cap it right at whatever it is.
Yeah. This idea was to allow bigger lots to have more water usage, but not a correlative amount.
Well, and I agree. And you would get that with the percentage, but maybe their percentage is if we allow, say we allowed it 18% on these smaller lots, but they get 17% or 16% because it's still a lot of grass area.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm just throwing out ideas. It's something that I think we just need to think about and come back, but these are the numbers I'm seeing.
I think that would be good. And I also, what grabs my attention is you look at the outliers. You look at a home with 1,821 square feet and it used 38,000 culinary water. I wonder why. What is the, I mean, maybe it's a simple answer. Maybe it's something that we can find in further data, but when we come back to the council, I would like to know what the thought is as to why those are.
That's an average, which means they've got winters in the teens and summers in the high 80s and 90s. And so, as Lester commented, their summer months are billed on a monthly tier, and so they would be paying a higher premium because their summer months become very high consumption.
They would, but I guess my concern is that what if there's what if there is a leak or a break or whatever? See, that's what's interesting about this data is it creates the ability to drill down on that. It's something that
So
I think
you've already
that,
approved the smart meters that'll tell Public Works if there's a leak once those are installed. I don't know exactly when they're installed, but you've already funded those. Your ordinance will also build in some more monitoring type opportunities for the city to know, and then education opportunities. So when those residents are upset about their bill, we can help them understand how to get it better.
We'll put some more time into this and bring back a proposal. I think we kind of understand where everybody's at, and we talked about pools, we talked about grass size. What was the third thing that?
Car washes.
Oh.
So Councilman Coates, on this one, you'll see that we put our lot sizes 1,000 square feet higher than the residential zones, because if we were to give an 8,000 square foot zone, sometimes there's, because of the way the lots are developed, some are 82, some are 72, and they average out.
Well,
So we'd probably do 7,000. What do you want its grass at?
I don't know. I'm just saying that I probably need more time to digest and think about it based on these. I mean, this is awesome data that I really appreciated. So I don't have a good idea exactly tonight, but
I might just draw a correlation from what's there, and then you guys can change it when we bring it back to you for.
yeah, and that's fine. And the thing I noticed is on those 6,000 square foot lots, they were using 750. So in my mind, it would be, and maybe instead of lot sizes, we do it per zone, and so we don't get some weird, like, what if you have a bigger, I don't know.
So we did this so that folks couldn't bring in a project at R18 and develop, 5 at 6,000 square feet and 5 at 10,000 square feet, right? We did this so that the zoning that they're granted mostly covers all of the lot sizes that they actually develop, because even the lot sizes are, there's an averaging factor there.
And just keep that in mind, because subdivisions are different, where, I mean, my subdivision it's zoned R16, has all R18, but then like my lot's at 12,000 because it's in a corner, it's just bigger a little bit in the backyard. So that's just added up just because of the placement.
Exactly, yeah. The lots never perfectly mirror the zone designation. So on car washes, we've had a lot of feedback to the council, some really low, some really high. We just need to know what number the council
And I
wants.
throw out a number just to start, and I'm not saying this is, I'd say somewhere in the 30 to 40 range of new water.
I think I concur with the mayor in discussing, we've been kind of all over the place. We've had a lot of good discussion with car wash operators. If we are interested in allowing them, I think 35 is probably the right number.
Yeah.
And the ones I've talked to feel like they can get underneath that number, but we had some information that was probably not correct, thinking we could go a lot lower. If we wanted to really eliminate new car washes, we would go lower than 35.
35.
And for clarity, 35 new water, or is that
New water
all-
new water per car.
New water per car. So if they're recycling water, in theory, they can reuse and recycle and maybe do more than that.
Recognizing that somebody that's watering on their own, washing their car is about 100 gallons. So I think there's still some savings.
I'm going to disagree with
Unless
that.
you're out there with a squirt bottle.
I'm just saying, unless you leave your hose running, there's no way I use 100 gallons of high wash.
That's me too. I mean, I was washing my car the other day and I was thinking about it as I was doing it. There is no way.
You can't do it that.
I've been
You
waiting.
gotta- I don't even think he used 15 gallons. I know how much it takes to fill up a 5-gallon bucket.
Well,
And it's,
Which
there's no
which
way.
month was this? I'll go post some data on your blog.
Okay.
Just kidding.
I'm waiting for the rain to wash my car, and it's been a year and a half, and
That's
it
the
hasn't
cheap, that's the
happened, so-
most conservative way right there is,
no, that's just the way your
Don't.
car gets dirty is when it sprinkles around here.
So Mayor, I'm sorry, Councilman. So Mayor, as we wrap this up, I would just be interested if the council he feels the need to talk to our partners again. I know there was some discussion about the Water Conservancy, you know, are comfortable. I mean, I certainly don't want to rush through this, but I think we've had a really good discussion today, and it's definitely coming into focus for me. But
I don't think we've rushed this at
No.
all. I think we've been slow
been
and
thorough.
considerate. I know the Water District is following up with me regularly about when we're gonna pass it. I know other cities have passed theirs already. I've kept you guys, I've emailed those to you as they go. I think it's about time for us to decide if we're gonna pass one of these or not, and if we are, to get it on the books. The main reason is the sooner it's on the books, the sooner it becomes applicable to growth.
Yeah, and I would just appreciate those of you who have met with Suba and you know, taking the time to research this. And I can tell you from the Conservancy District standpoint, you know, they initially had some guidelines, but they are intentionally leaving this to the municipalities. They're leaving it to this body, to this city, to draft our ordinance. And so I appreciate that. While they support an ordinance, they've given some feedback, but they want us to do our job. So
Can I give a really quick thank you? I think this data was really, really helpful, and it's really good in helping us make good decisions. So I appreciate Thad, and along with Thad, Dale and GIS put together all of the data that you saw, and Shelley and Brittany in utilities helped match it. So there's a lot of work that went into this, but I think it was really, really helpful for our discussion.
I appreciate it. Thank you for going with it. And,
Good work.
and to comment on Councilman Ivy, I think we should get it back to our partners, but we need that to find out or get his draft finalized and then just get it in front of them. And then I think that'll bring up any questions they have.
Because right now you haven't made any changes that we've talked about. You've just been writing everything down.
Correct. I've
so
just been
far.
taking notes, trying to make sure I'm following the general consensus of the council.
Are we ready for a draft with a public hearing to hear? We do have to hear from the public on the ordinance.
Yeah, I mean, I think our discussions have been good and productive, and I think the 35 gallons I mean, we've got to be realistic with the business owners that run those type of businesses, and I agree with that. And I think we've had some good discussion, and I agree with that. It's time to put it together and move forward and make it happen, so.
I do have a quick, I know we are running out of time, but on the landscape standards on 8-8-4, when you have you have to have a landscape architect, does this documentation, I know we have talked about how, you know, a property owner, he was going to go and do his landscape. He doesn't have to have an architect.
So you notice
Landscape
section 4 is non-residential, and so it's commercial and industrial zones.
And so my question is where does it show where you know, like in
Single family.
yeah, where does it show for them the documentation that they,
So if you go to section 5,
And I think we can clarify that in our updates, don't you?
this is,
We'll
yeah,
make it
this
real
is
clear.
section 5's landscape standards for basically everything that's not residential and commercial. We still require that residential bring us a sketch of what they're going to do so that staff can review it.
but do you have it in here where they have where it shows that they have to do that?
My understanding is they don't, based on the non-residential, they don't have to have a landscape architect, but they have to provide a drawing.
So they just, but do you have that in there that it shows where they have to just,
Probably
the
what we
clear-
really want to see. We just want to see the amount of grass that they intend to put in before they do it, and we make them take it out. And so we can clarify that in
So
here.
in section 3, which is the single family, we've got landscape standards here. And so we don't have anything that says you have to bring us a landscape architect opinion or project. But we do say that staff gets to review their project, and staff's going to expect that they've had some form of landscaping expertise applied to their plan.
So I just this last week, I submitted to one of the cities that's already passed the ordinance. I submitted a building review plan. You know, I submitted my stuff to build a house, and they've what I did is I had to submit a landscaping plan. I just took a copy of the site plan and did some colored pencils. It took me literally 10 minutes. And they said, that's great. We accept that and looks good. And so I think we can do something simple like that. I mean,
I just wanted it
it was
to be-
literally 10 minutes. So,
I like
That's
that.
in this city? Different
and,
city?
yeah, different city that's
Yeah.
already passed, one of these. So.
Well, I appreciate you bringing that up. That was a good point. That was kind of a loose end. Any further questions before I call for a motion to adjourn? Call for a motion.
So made.
Ivy, Coates, all in favor?
Aye.
Adjourned.
Good discussion. That's just like a game plan that you can follow. was good. Yeah.
Meets the
Well, he's from Mississippi. He has a letter of reference from Coach Saban. He worked in Alabama in the AD department and as an assistant coach. A degree from Utah, a master's from Utah State, and played football.
Okay. We like that.
A lot of boxes.
All right. We'll get this meeting started. Today's Wednesday, March 23rd. We're here at Washington City Hall in the City Council chambers for our regular council meeting. This meeting is being broadcast via YouTube Live. It can be followed online at washingtoncity.org/meetings. Councilmember Martinson will be joining us remotely as his schedule permits, but may not be here the entire meeting. At this time, I'd like to invite our friend Reverend Rakeem Keston from Solomon Porch Foursquare Fellowship to offer our invocation.
Father God, we come before you and we ask you to bless this meeting, Lord, that you would guard our hearts, open our minds, and watch our words. We ask you to protect those that serve us, our first responders, Lord, that you would put an extra edge of protection around them, Lord. We praise you for all that you do, and we're so grateful that we live in a country where we can still voice our own opinions. Praise you and we thank you. We pray this in Jesus' name, and all God's people said,
Amen.
Thank you, Reverend. Beautiful prayer. We appreciate you and your family. I've asked our Assistant Leisure Services Director, Ben Ray, if he'd lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Great. So before I ask for approval of the agenda, I want to make note for any of those who are here for item 8A that the applicant has asked for this to be tabled until our next meeting on April 13th. So I'm happy to have that item 8A tabled as part of the motion to approve the agenda to our April 13th meeting, or I can do that when we get there.
So can we just move it up on the agenda, and do you want separate motions, Thad?
I would just make your motion when it's called.
When it's on up?
Yeah, when 8A comes up, make your motion.
Great. So at this time, I will call for a motion to approve the agenda as outlined.
Mayor, I move that we approve the agenda as outlined.
Have a motion by Councilman Henderson,
Second by Ivy.
second by Councilman Ivy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Agenda is approved unanimously. All right. So we have had a busy few weeks since our last council meeting, including groundbreakings and a ribbon cutting. But I think the best was last night, where we were able to thank, honor, and serve dinner provided by the community to the community served by our first responders. and to honor and serve them and their families. So appreciated that. This Friday, right here in our council chambers, at Friday, March 25th at 8:30 a.m., we will be hosting Udot's Public Transportation Committee meeting. For any of you that are interested in that, they'll have officials from across the state and will be here in our council chambers to discuss the projects. And on Saturday at 11 a.m. at the St. George Town Square, will be the Gold Star Families Memorial Monument dedication. And so this designation goes to families who have lost a loved one due to their military service. So I think it would be entirely appropriate for any who's able to make it over there to support that. That is a beautiful monument and a dedication, and something that knows no municipal boundaries.
What was that time again?
Yeah,
Mayor?
could you?
So that's at 11 a.m. on Saturday at St. George Town Square. And then
I think that's on our calendar, right?
it should be. I know that our recorder, if it's not already there, she's listening, and we'll be adding those as we go through. And then also on Saturday at 7 p.m. at the gazebo here at Veterans Park will be the Washington City Princess Pageant. The St. George Area Chamber of Commerce Element Awards are set for Thursday, March 31st at 6 p.m. at the Dixie Convention Center. If any on the council would like to attend that, please reach out to Tara, and she can probably still get you tickets. And then just to keep in mind, toward the end of April, we have Cotton Days, the County Fair, as well as the Utah League of Cities and Towns Convention at the Dixie Center, and early May will be the Ironman World Championship. So I just want you to all be aware of that, to keep that on your radar. And then lastly, as we approve some of these special events that are kind of community type events, the recorder will update our council calendar. So just be sure to sync your calendar and keep an eye for anything you may want to attend. Is there anything that I missed there, council? Any additional announcements or thoughts?
Did we hit the cleanup that Kimberly's organized for Saturday?
So the cleanup is on. Do you want to talk about that? Or I can talk about it, whatever. So the cleanup is going to be Saturday. We're meeting at 8 a.m. for anybody in the community that wants to come out. For last year, I think we did that, or last couple of years. The idea is to clean up along Telegraph to make sure that the grounds are looking great for the parade and for the festivities. So
We'll be meeting at Veterans Park.
so we'll be here at Veterans Park at 8 a.m. and for an hour or two, and we'll provide some orange vests and trash bags, and we'll be ready to go.
Yeah, so just bring gloves and whatever kind of tools you want to use. I don't know what those are called.
Perfect. Anything else, council? Okay. Any abstentions or conflicts to declare? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item 4, which is recognition. So recently, the Utah Recreation and Parks Association held their annual conference here in Southern Utah. As part of the event, parks and recreation professionals from around the state toured local parks. And in our Leisure Services Director's words, they were blown away by the 3 parks in Washington City that they toured. And this was a part of that conference. There were about 50 people on a bus. They paid for the tour, and they really enjoyed our staff was there. They met, they welcomed, they fielded a number of questions. They were just absolute fantastic hosts. And the parks that were toured were our Sullivan Soccer Park, our Canyon Park and Hellhole Trailhead, and the Boilers and Natural Spring and Conservation Garden. And they just, each one of those in their own right, were just so impressive. So in 2021, for the record, the Canyon Park and Hellhole Trailhead won what they termed an award as the Innovative Park of the Year. And I wanted to bring that on the record before we present another award, because these awards are voted on by their peers. And so as you go up and down the state, you know, there are communities across the state that are designing and building and maintaining parks. And the award for, and what they termed innovative park, and it certainly is there in 2021, was our Canyon Park and Hellhole Trailhead. So we really appreciate it. We're really honored to receive that award. But in 2022, this year, we won again. So this time it was with the Boilers and Natural Spring and Conservation Garden. And the award was appropriately named the Commitment to Conservation Award. And to me, the name and use of the word conservation is particularly meaningful because not only did we rehabilitate an old swimming hole that was often called the Warm Springs, but we also incorporated a conservation garden with the parks around the natural spring. And this was done in partnership with the Washington County Water Conservancy District. And you'll notice there at the park, there's the area of the native plants and a desert garden. In fact, if you go along there, you can look at the native plants that are water saving type plants. You can see what the name of the plant is. You can read a little bit about it, and if you want more information, you can scan the QR code, and it'll link you up to more detailed information. And recently, this park has been listed on the Desert Garden Registry, along with the Red Hills and with Tonquin. So at this time, I want to formally and officially present the Commitment to Conservation Award for the Boilers, a Natural Spring, and Conservation Garden, and would just ask Barry and Ben and Cole to come forward, and I'll come down and officially award this to you.
We clap. That's where I can never, I always think. Well, of course. We do that strategically.
And before you go anywhere there, Barry, I just want to give you an opportunity to, I know I was probably more thorough than I needed to be, but I'm really so proud of this park. And so I just actually would like you to come up and just fill in anything I might have missed and just kind of share your thoughts about this award and what it means to be, you know, back-to-back winners for the best parks in the state.
Well, I appreciate it. It's certainly an honor for us to receive this award and the award last year. Most of all, we just want to thank those who support us, mayor and council and our administration. It wouldn't be done with all that without that, and we know that and recognize that, so we appreciate that. And then also, I've got to recognize Cole and Ben, my assistants, who do so much. They're fantastic, and they're the ones that make things happen and run. And one person that's not here I want to recognize is Paul Walker. He had a lot to do with this conservation area. He designed it. The parks guys, our crews planted that and are taking care of it, and they do such a wonderful job. And so it was great. It was great to meet with all of those folks from around the state and have them see our parks, and they loved them. They asked questions. We were there to answer them, and they wanted to know how we did it and how we took care of it and how everything looked so good all the time. And so it's because of those that I work with and that we work with, not just a few of us, but even all the crews that really make these parks beautiful and do everything in the leader services. We appreciate the employees. So thank
Barry,
you.
would you just touch on some of the methods that you use to rehabilitate and conserve the boilers, that natural spring?
So when we got into that was quite a big project, and it was kind of sloughing away from the north side. The integrity of the pond wasn't that great, and so we put in some gabion baskets and shored that up and really kind of brought the boilers up about 4 feet, the pond, and put a cement spillway on the other side just to really improve that pond and to ensure the integrity of it for many years. So it was a challenge. There was a lot of work to be done there, and but it just turned out beautiful, and people love it and enjoy it. That's what we like more than anything when we build something, is to see it used. And those parks are used. All those parks are used all the time. And that's what we do it for. We don't want to build a park that just sits there. We want it used and people to enjoy it, and the families and the residents to be there. So that's what we love. So thank you.
And certainly it was used and recognized. Before I let you out of the hot seat, Council, is there anything you'd like to share? I know Councilman Coates, you were a big part of that Canyon Park and Hillhole Trailhead. Is there any comments or questions that you'd like to add?
Just keep up the good work. That's all I say. You guys do a good job. I've known all of you for a lot of years. Just keep up the good work.
Well, and Councilman Coates was also very instrumental in that park. We worked together a lot on that, and it turned out beautiful. It was a great project, and Mayor Staley had a lot to do with the boilers and the things that went on there, and those ties with the Water Conservancy District and what went on there, that partnership. And so those things are so important. We appreciate it.
Let's bring an award back for the Wheels Park next.
Yeah. And it's looking good.
Yes, it is.
The handlebar has been set pretty high.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Barry. We appreciate you guys. Cole and Ben, thanks so much, guys. All right, let's move on to item 5, which is our consent agenda. 5A, approval of minutes from our city council meeting on 3/9/22. Item 5B, final plat, consideration to approve Crimson Park Phase 2 and Crimson Park Phase 3. Item 5C, special events. There's a list here. The Rams Summer Activity, the Lions Club Easter Egg Hunt, which is on April 16th at 10 a.m. And we're glad to have our special needs kids fishing event back, and now at Sullivan Park at the pond there. Another item to approve is the Miracles for Mustangs 5K and Parade at Crimson Cliffs High School, which is set for this Saturday at 9 a.m. And the last one is consideration to approve a special event for Havoc in Washington Car Show. And this is an annual event to raise funds for canine units in Washington County. This year, the event will be held at Washington Elementary on April 9th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Any brief conversation on the consent agenda?
Yeah, Mayor, can we pull item 5B, 1 and 2, and just discuss it after the consent agenda? I just have some questions for staff.
Absolutely.
What are you pulling?
The final plats, item 5B, 1 and 2.
Great. Any other polls or brief conversations?
Mayor,
Okay, seeing none, call for a motion to approve the consent agenda, removing 5B, items 1 and 2.
Thank you, Mayor. I have reviewed the minutes of 3/9/22, and I'm comfortable with the special events, so I motion to approve those, noting that final plat 5BI and 5BII have been pulled out.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilman Ivy,
Second by Coates.
second by Coates. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Let's move to discussion on the final plats for Crimson Park Phase 2 and Phase 3.
So I just had a question for staff, and it has to do with 4200 South. My question is, I'll have to admit I'm a little surprised the road's not totally complete yet. I know they're under construction. My question is, when is 4200 South going to be? And I would hope that these plats don't get recorded until that's fully built. Yeah.
So I spoke.
Hi, Eldon Gibb.
Yes, city planner. Thank you, Mayor, Councilman. I spoke with the engineer this afternoon on that. They brought him in as 2 phases, Phase 2 and 3. They're planning to develop that all at once. And the road is going in with the construction. He did commit that it won't be recorded until the plats or the road is complete.
So they don't plan on bonding this section. They're going to wait till the road's done before we record the plat.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just think this road has been an instrumental piece to this whole area, this connection, and I think we've pushed it as far. I mean, in my opinion, we're over that limit, and I know we want to work with them, but we really need this road with all the developments heading south. And this will be the main drive for a lot of the high school from the east. And so I think it's crucial. I just wanted to make sure that they weren't bonding for it and we were going to get it in a few years or something. So
It'll be in shortly.
You comfortable with that? Call for a motion then to approve item 5B, 5BI and 5BII as part of the consent agenda, which is final plat for Crimson Park Phase 2 and Phase 3.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve the final plats for Crimson Park Phase 2 and Phase 3.
A motion by Councilmember Coates,
I'll second it.
second by Councilmember Henderson. All in favor?
Aye.
That is approved. We'll move along to item 6, preliminary plat. And this is consideration to approve a preliminary plat for Finley Farms Townhomes Phase 3. City Planner, Eldon Gibb.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. This particular subdivision is proposing 55 units on an area covering 5.26 acres. The zoning designation at this location was recently rezoned to PUDR on October 27th of 2021. In the motion for approval, City Council added 3 conditions, which included adding 9 visitor parking stalls throughout the entire project, completion of the amenity to take place at or prior to 25% of the CFOs at the given phase, and to build a solid block wall along Weatherby Way. The applicant has incorporated these conditions into the preliminary plat. 3 visitor parking stalls have been added to this phase, and the other 6 stalls will be added to the phases 1 and 2 on the south end. The surrounding zoning is agricultural 20 to the north, PUDR to the east, PUDR to the south, and residential 8,000 to the west. The proposed subdivision conforms to the approved zoning. The request meets the subdivision requirements and other city ordinances as it relates to this location. Staff has reviewed the request and recommends approval with conditions of the preliminary plat as outlined. The Planning Commission reviewed this request on March 2nd, 2022, and unanimously recommended approval of the preliminary plat based on the following findings and subject to the following conditions. I would like to just note Weatherby Way. I had a discussion with the engineer on that today, just kind of timing on that. I know it's tied to the NRCS line, and there's some other issues which I'll let her address, briefly speak to on that, just so I'm not the middleman on that. And I'm happy to answer any other questions on that.
Council, any questions for our city planner before I invite the applicant up?
Just one on the parking stalls. It runs in my mind that we were going to add some in the phases, correct? Maybe some will come now, some will come in the next phase.
Yes, sir. Yeah, 3 were added to phase 3, and the other 9 or 6 will be added to the phases 1 and 2.
Okay, seeing no further questions at this time, I'll invite the applicant to come forward if they'd like to address the council. And we know you, but you'd state your name.
Brandy Walker with Civil Science representing the applicant tonight. Whatever questions you guys might have, I guess, is I'll try to muddle through the Weatherby Way, but if that's the concern.
That's my concern, is Weatherby Way not being improved. Similar on that last application, is just this is the access to this, and we're coming through the back door a little bit.
Yeah, if you
And so let me just, we had a different applicant when we got I'm gonna say they had a different engineering firm. I don't know what happened with who bought or sold or whatever is where we're at today, but it was intended that Weatherby Way would be improved when these came on. So that's my concern today, is that Weatherby Way is not being improved as part of this application with how it looks. So if you can address that, Brandy.
can you pull up the county map? I mean, we're really zoomed in. So, So the master developer sold off parcels adjacent to Weatherby. So Weatherby is still owned by the master developer. So the purchase agreement that was done with the Finley Farms, we're calling this, I think it's phase 3. So this 55 towns had in it an addendum that holds them to the development of Weatherby Way, the physical improvement of it as far as financially. So as you can see, the access wouldn't be coming off the Fields Road because it's going through Sandia Farm still. So that there's the roadway right there. So when they purchase their 5 acres, which is that little triangle you're seeing, they're obligated to contribute to the improvement of the road financially. But at this time, due to the location of the NRCS pipe, and it's not ready to be relocated, these 55 units were not financially obligated to participate with the NRCS line. So, and it's not getting relocated at this time until stuff on the south are at the need of that. So their access, we've been working with Desert Canyons, who's doing the project immediately north, who owns 4290 South. There's a memorandum of understanding in place on how that agreement is. So our accesses are coming from the north and from the west. None of our utilities are coming off Weatherby Way. None of our units front onto it. As Eldon mentioned, we're obligated to build the block wall this time. And then when Weatherby Way goes to develop, triggering the access need to tie in for the parcels on the south side, the applicant of these 55 townhomes at that point will be obligated to contribute financially.
Drew, can you slide over just a little bit? To the east. No, east. Okay, thanks. I just wanted to see where fields.
Yeah. There's a couple, there's.
Yeah, he brought it over for a second and then went back. No, I just need a little bit more, Drew. I just want to see where it ties into Fields Road.
Iron Horse.
The other way, Drew. East. That's good.
Yeah.
So even though this isn't your road, do you have any idea of the timing on that?
I think it's more dependent on when the developer on the south side of Weatherby Way, the other Finley Farms Townhomes Phase 1 and 2, wants to move forward. Because at that point, they will need more access and utilities. And I can't speak for what they're doing with the nursery. I don't know a timing on when they're, maybe Drew has insight.
Well, no, that's just my question. I'm sitting here going, you were talking about, well, I'm sitting here baffled that the road got changed in the design to go right through there, and yet I haven't heard of them having any plans to leave as of yet. So we can't be held hostage all that time waiting for the nursery to decide then they're done or moving. And if that road, I think we need to start looking into that right now between Public Works, all of you guys, and see what we're going to do there, because we've got to get that road tied to the Fields Road. There's no ands, ifs, or buts about that, but we can't be. That's unacceptable right there, I guess. So, not sure what you want to do about that.
This image is rather, well, I shouldn't really call it old. Development's just happening really fast. But all the stuff immediately west is graded under construction right now. So there will be access points coming from.
But that's my concern, is that we're bringing it from the west. I mean, we were sold when we did the planning that we were going to have an access from the east. So I want to see that too. And we've got all this development coming from the west and we have access, but it's more of getting the access from our main arterial road to the, I mean, when they brought this in, they didn't say they were going to go develop little parcels at a piece, and we can't control that. But we were also told we were going to have a roadway access from Weatherby to develop these townhomes when we get even more density down there.
So Weatherby right there, that's the back side of bottom side of Crimson. That's direct access to 3000 via 2450 South for St. George. So there's major road connection happening. It's just further to the south.
There's major road connection from the west, but not from the east. So from the east, everybody has to go through those residential neighborhoods is the problem, I think, that we're trying to address.
Yeah. Sounds like with the platting of Crimson, that project on just before, we're getting very close.
So I'm just bringing up my concern. So and when we were sold when we did the zoning, it was that it was connecting.
Yeah.
So
I know that for marketability, everybody in Finley Farms would love the connection out to Washington Fields Road. So they're pushing for it as well.
So who is it who owns that piece and would be responsible for moving the NRCS line and putting the road in?
I don't know the details of the master development agreement, so I don't really know. I know my client he's tied into it. They're obligated to it. So I think it's kind of a collaboration of all the different property owners that have bought into Finley Farms, there's an obligation there.
So maybe we need to get with, looking at you, Mike. Do you have any idea?
Mike knows. If Mike doesn't know, I know. We can talk.
But is it in movement to get the road through? I mean, I understand we've got the NRCS line, but is everything else in place once that's figured out?
Well, and here's the challenge. If the applicant owned the land where the nursery sits, we could impose requirements to have that road section dedicated, but it's difficult on us to say, dedicate to the city land that you don't own, right?
Yeah, but
And-
when they brought the zoning before, they had both sides of the road was one application for both sides.
Yep.
And then they went and decided to piece it up, and which is their right. But now how do we, and it was zoned based on that there would be an access.
So I spoke to the homeowner or the property owner there probably 2 months ago. This is the greenhouse, right?
Yeah, I don't know if there's any thoughts at all of moving the greenhouse.
So when I spoke with him, he indicated that they had to move the buildings that were right under the cliffs to the south and east, south and west of this, but he didn't indicate to me that they were planning to move those at all. And it looks to me like the way that road line comes through there, you're going to have to move them both to make that work. So I would think that we're probably months out. I would really think we should know what that looks like sooner than later.
I know developments and inconvenience on the neighbors that weren't there a couple years prior. I get it. I live out in the fields. I love it out there. But I just want to note that this, because of the city's review process, this has gone before the fire chief, and he has given us a thumbs up as far as, fire and life safety, and we meet the traffic access management as far as the city has outlined. So as far as convenience to have a road out, I understand the timing based on the PD plan, but for the 55 townhomes, we do meet all the requirements.
Aren't they using this for their haul road right now? Basically the same roadway? I believe that they are.
Is there any other discussion on just the project itself besides Weatherby Way? I mean, I think I matched what they presented before. I mean, that's what is that what they presented before, Drew? That's the new one, right? What was the one that they submitted for their PUD? We didn't get that in our packet. Do we have that one? I just want to make sure.
You mean the approved PUD?
Mm-hmm. I just want to make sure we're matching that, and I just didn't get it. Do you have it, Eldon?
I don't, but it was approved on October 27th of 21 if we want to
Go find it
pull
if you
it
just
up.
give me a second.
Yeah, I just want to make that note.
Just know we had a lot of discussion on how these townhomes get laid out. Things got tweaked around based on that, on the final.
So Eldon, is everything else built in this section except for what's south of Weatherby Way that still has to be done? Is this the last one to be approved? Or are there more that will come to add even more to this issue?
Well, there's the ones that directly southeast of this project.
And that would have to have Weatherby Way.
Yeah, I'm just saying those two, but there was a lot of density in those two section of units.
Eldon, what date was that? The 5th? October 27th.
At one point, we're going to have a whole bunch of driveways onto a non-existent Weatherby Way. So I guess we can be happy for that.
Are you putting a block wall all the way along Weatherby Way, or just? Yes, she's shaking her head for the record.
Nodding,
Nodding.
yes.
You can see it shows it all the way out to Washington Fields Road in this application.
And you can, well, it's hard to see on, on this, but you can see the vague, there's an outline of a building right here, which I would assume is the nursery, right where my cursor's going. It's hard, you can't see it. Well, you can see it on this screen. I would imagine that's the nursery, and it's, so everything, you know, on the other side of the street and there, so we got, I thought these things were already dealt with the nursery back in the, you know, because that's who they bought the land from, was the owners of the nursery owned all this land that's being developed by both these now developers. So we got to get some clarity of what their agreements were, because I don't want to proceed if they're not planning on moving anything right
Like
now,
I said,
right?
as of about 2 months ago, there was no indication that the owner was going to be moving, so.
Do you want to table this until we get more information?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I think we vetted the project, but I think we need to get Weatherby Way addressed, get staff comfortable, get us comfortable, because like Drew's pulling up now, I mean, it was one project and Weatherby Way was going to be built. And that's why I was good with moving forward with it then, was that we would have access from Washington Fields Road.
That would give us opportunity also to find out about the line that needs to be moved.
Yeah.
And because that's fundamental to what we're talking about as well, so.
All right, council, I'm hearing a kind of a general consensus to table. Applicant, your thoughts to that? I know you'd rather have an approval, but I'm sure you, and we understand your comments. I'm sure you understand also where the council's coming from with access from the east.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll get with my clients and we'll get all that paperwork together. I know it's been bits and pieces to staff, so we probably just need to organize it. I just kind of want to reiterate, we are on the north side. We're not affected by Weatherby, but we'll put that all together. I know I've been talking to the owner of the south side. They're different. So I know that they're wanting to move forward as well, which obviously poses a problem for them with the greenhouses or.
And I hope you understand what our concern is it's just a lot of density right there. And we were told we were getting this.
To not funnel it to the west.
And not funnel from the west. And on other projects to the north, that was a requirement, is that, hey, if you're bringing in this tighter density, you got to get your access. That was like the last piece. We feathered to the last piece before we get to the Fields Road. So I'm reiterating what our understanding was for me. And so when we saw this application, I'm like, well, what about the access? That should have been a part of this. And I didn't know the history that they'd sold off pieces. So.
Yeah, absolutely. They sold off phases. Yeah.
Phases?
Yeah, that's probably a better term.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get some clarification on it.
Okay.
Thank you, Brandy. And so, kind of for the record, our next council meeting is April 13th. So we've got a little bit of time, but it would be great if there could be that coordination in the meantime, coming back through staff. Any further discussion before? It sounds like what is a motion to table until April 13th?
No,
I'll motion that we table item 6A until April 13th.
I have a motion by Councilman Henderson.
I'll second it.
Second by Councilmember Casperson. All in favor? All in favor?
Aye.
It is tabled until April 13th. We'll move on to item 7, which is a development agreement. And this is consideration to approve the Highland Pumps development agreement between CW Solis LLC and Washington City, located in Black Ridge at Coral Canyon. And we will hear from our Assistant Public Works Director, Lester Dalton, to give us some history on this for those who haven't been involved up to this point, and let us know what this agreement is before us today. Lester.
Okay, Mayor, Council, Lester with Public Works. Wanted to kind of give you guys a little bit of background on this. This originally started out with the Highlands tank. We ultimately ended up generating a zonal impact fee to cover the area to be able to service the East Black Ridge there above Coral Canyon and Sienna Hills. by the time we put the bids out, everything, the price just got unbelievable. It was just unreal how expensive it was going to be to build that tank. We went back to the drawing board a little bit and worked with the developer and came to kind of a consensus agreement with staff and the developer that this is potentially something that we would consider. It's going to be our first pressure pumps within the city. So it's kind of a new concept for staff as a whole. But we're comfortable with it. We feel like the technology's come far enough that it can operate properly. It won't be an ongoing maintenance nightmare for us, and potentially we can get this to come together and have everything work out. And as staff, we're comfortable with it. So when we reached a level of comfort, then we had to come back to the drawing board a little bit and say, okay, this is different. How do we accommodate this? And Coal West Home, the developer up there, has determined that they're comfortable to fund the majority of the expense. There is a little bit associated with the city still. Well, I shouldn't say a little bit, it's pretty significant. But kind of in summary, what the city is providing here is a location to place the northern pump facility, which will be within our existing compound up there with the tank.
Drew, can you pull up a map real quick of just so that the council can see where these are? Just the aerial, so that when Lester
probably
says
the
on the
aerial will be
tank, they
fine.
know where they're talking.
So we would provide a location for that facility to sit. The other component that we would be providing would be the design for both facilities as a whole, just the pump facilities, not the distribution system, not any of the piping components, but the pump facilities themselves. That way we've got control of the design throughout the process for any changes that we may see. Like I said, this is our first go at pumps. We want to make sure that we get it right this first time. So we wanted to keep control of the design within the city's oversight. The third and final component that the city would be providing would be, we would make the purchase for the generator for the facility. Both of these facilities will need to have a generator. We would purchase the generator for the northern facility, and it would be installed by Coal West as part of the agreement. All of the installation, all of the construction, all of the expenses associated with that, including the purchase of the pump facility themselves, the actual skid and the pumps, and all of the infrastructure needed would be at the expense of the developer with their contractors, and we would have oversight on that.
So why generators, Lester? Why not just
this will be an entirely pumped zone. There will be no gravity feed for it for fire flows. So in that environment, according to the state regulations, we have to have backup facilities to verify that there is always fire protection, there is always water available for the homes. That's also the reason for the two fully redundant facilities. So each facility independently can operate the pressure zone. They don't have to be in unison to operate. So we've got a redundant facility on the north end as well as one on the south end to accommodate any potential emergency environments. If we have a pump that goes down, any of them components, we still keep the water flowing. We still have the ability to provide.
That's what I thought you was going to say, but our power never goes out here.
Right. Exactly. We keep it on all the time, even in July.
Lester, is there anything else you'd like to add before we open it up for questions or discussion?
I think that's it, unless council's got questions for me.
Talk about the money. We were about, I believe the tank and stuff was, I guess I just want to know an idea of the cost, what the city portion is going to be, what the remaining balance would be paid by.
The cost on the city, we're going to be in the vicinity of about $200,000 by the time we get the generator expense and the engineering expense associated with it. It is a budgeted item. We had the tank in the budget, didn't have enough money there. I mean, it's been kind of a.
You remember what the tank was, what we budgeted for that?
We were looking at a 500,000 gallon tank, and the bids came in at $2 million.
So I see this as a huge benefit. We're saving money and we're getting a system that It's a new system, but it's not a new system to the area.
It's tested somewhere.
It's tested. It's not like we're inventing something. So I think it's great. I'm glad Public Works looked at it, and it's definitely, it's a cost savings for everyone. And I'm assuming you're coming back, the impact fee will go away from the Coal West, or a smaller one?
Yes. Well, what's going to end up happening is we will remove the portion of property that Coal West currently owns. It's defined via legal description in the agreement. That property would be removed once this facility is built from the impact fee obligation. We've still got to work through the details associated with the remaining property to the north of Coal West property, because they're getting some of the benefit of this. Consequently, that's the reason that we're willing to put in some of the expenses. The impact fee's already there. We've got it covered. We need to massage it to make it fit the circumstance.
Are we considering just adjusting the zonal impact fee, or removing that altogether?
That's what I'm thinking right now, is that we remove it from the Coal West property once the facilities are constructed.
My comment would just piggyback on Councilmember Coates. I give kudos to the staff for choosing to look at other options. If you remember, not only just the cost, but this tank was going to go, if I'm right, across the street in the reserve. Across the street, across I-15 in the reserve. And these tanks are not the most beautiful things when we put them up there. And as we get further up in these areas, this is going to become more of an issue. But I appreciate the staff for looking at that. I believe the zonal impact fee was $7,400 per lot.
In addition to
the additional impact fee. So we're going to save residents a lot of money, and we're going to make it look better. And I just really appreciate the staff for looking at this and coming up with options, because it's new to us. So
that's a good demonstration of not only cooperation, but know-how. Just being able to put all that together. I imagine you don't do that every day. So.
No. And we went and visited some facilities as well. I've got a pretty good level of comfort with it now. I was skittish about it initially, but I've got a good level of comfort with it. We've been working with pump suppliers. They've come a long way in the last 10 to 15 years. They really have. So,
how many homes does this service?
I want to say 269 is what all the design criteria is based on.
And of course, we can't have any COs on any houses until this is in place.
That's correct.
Because it won't meet fire code. So.
And it can't be partially in place. It has to be the entire, both facilities and all of the infrastructure for them. It's going to be pretty expensive up front.
Of course, Chief Evans has been a part of this conversation. He's lockstep. Okay.
Good discussion, Lester. We appreciate your work. We appreciate you taking the time on a variety of issues, and water issues in particular, to become the resident expert. Council, further questions, further discussion? If not, I'm ready for a motion on item 7, and I will call for a roll call vote since it's a development agreement.
Mayor, I'm comfortable in making a motion to approve the Highland Pumps development agreement between CW Solace LLC and Washington City. It's located in Black Ridge at Coral Canyon.
I have a motion by Councilman Ivy.
I'll second that.
Second by Councilman Henderson. We'll start on this end. Casperson.
Aye.
Ivy.
Aye.
Coates.
Aye.
Henderson.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Councilmember Martinson is not on as of my last check, so that passes 4-0. We'll move along to item 8, ordinance. At this time, I will call for a motion to table item 8A as per the applicant's request, which was consideration to table to April 13th regular council meeting, which was a consideration to approve an ordinance for zone change Z-21-26 PUDC planned unit development commercial approval for elevation, architecture, and all other design elements.
Mayor, I'll make that motion that we table item 8A, zone change Z-21-26 PUDC till the April 13th meeting. Thank you.
Have a motion by Councilman Coates.
I'll second that, Mayor.
Second by Councilman Ivy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Item 8A is tabled until April 13th. Moving along, item 8B is consideration to approve an ordinance revising conditions to zone change Z-21-27 PUDC planned unit development commercial located at the corner of 14 North and 300 East. And I'm looking for our new development project manager, John Hinkie. If not, I'm confident someone else from Public Works can handle this one.
Make sure
Can you state your name for the record, sir?
Thank you, Mayor. Mike Shaw. I'll try to muddle my way through this. The applicant on this project, when
Get close to the microphone, please, Mr. Shaw.
the applicant on this project, once they got some drawings put together, we looked at this turnout here, and it really didn't work for the project. There was a lot of issues with the project. You've seen that in the briefing document. Issues with the storm grates. That's a major undertaking to move those storm grates, relocate them. We'd have to move them up the road to be able to capture the water that comes down 300 East. Issues with the turning movement coming in, being able to make that turn. You see that in this document that's up. The guy wires on the power pole and issues with the water meter, that would require digging back into 300 East, bringing a new service in off of the main. We don't allow coupling of services. So with that, the staff really would like to see this go back to the original design. We think it would work better than having the turnout in here.
So I was the one that pushed this pretty hard, and I've had lots of discussions with Jeremy about it, and I can see there's a lot of complications. It's a tough site. The one thing that I thought is we still got to protect that left turn. Is there a way we can just put a 12-inch median down that section?
Protect it so there wouldn't be a left turns out of it.
Yeah.
Out of the,
and then don't do the pork chop, don't do the right turn, because I looked at it, it looked like maybe you'd get a car and a half. I mean, is that really, it's just a tough site. It's not ideal. It's not anything as far as the access, but it's a site we have to deal with, and it's not like we can push it to the back or not. So, I mean.
Yeah, that's possible to put.
So my recommendation that I'm going to say is that I'm okay with mending it if we put a median down 300 East from the access up past this property, or whatever engineering requires.
Are you saying from 300 East
Where Drew
to Telegraph?
No, where Drew drew it past the property line though.
Oh, okay.
So they can't go make a quick right.
Just to
flip turn.
inhibit that left turn out.
And
Probably
then
have to
I
be
like
about
that.
20 feet past the property.
I appreciate going through the process. I really wish we could have got it, but that is a lot of different utilities that we weren't. I mean, I wasn't aware of that many different utilities that had to be moved. And I mean, I don't always. I want to do what's right for the public and the road, but it's probably that serves the same purpose, I guess. And if we're gonna only get one stacking car, that just means the second one's in the intersection. So we just better not have stacking cars. You better have enough stacking in the site.
So I actually, it's funny, I had that same idea about that. Is there any limitations to a median? We have the rights and abilities to do that. Of course, the applicant would be paying for it. Is that correct?
The applicant would be installing it as part of their project.
But there's no problem with doing that, with getting it
No,
done?
it'd be just a narrow concrete barrier.
Something that we handle within the city.
Similar to what we have already on Telegraph right before we turn left. Just, I don't know how wide those are, 12 inches to 18 inches. Just, it might even, I mean, we're just trying to deter the traffic from turning left. We want them to turn right so that we're not blocking that intersection.
Makes sense. Yep.
Good comments, good discussion. Further discussion, or are we ready to amend this ordinance?
I'm ready, Mayor.
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion that we amend the condition. Do we have a number on that?
Z-21-27.
I meant the condition number. Do we have a condition number that we're replacing? Do I need to? I'll just state that, okay, so I'll make a motion that we amend the conditions for zone change Z-21-27 of requiring a deceleration lane and a right-in, right-out on 300 East from this project, and replacing it with a condition that a median island along 300 East is installed.
Sounds like a good motion. Comfortable with that motion, staff? I'm looking for a second.
I'll second that.
Motion by Councilmember Coates, second by Councilmember Henderson. And we'll do a roll call vote. Henderson?
Aye.
Coates?
Aye.
Ivy?
Aye.
Casperson?
Aye.
And item 8B passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Move on to item 8C, which is consideration to approve an ordinance amending the Washington City Code Title 7, Chapter 1, Article B, drinking water source protection by repealing and replacing it in its entirety. And this is a minor correction, maybe not even worth Lester's time to walk to the podium. It is actually a typo in the original ordinance. It's a simple replacement of the word. The word feet was used in place of day. So this needs to be done in order to get our new wells in the reserve, as Lester said online. Did I steal all of your thunder, or do you have anything else to add?
Only if you guys would like to go through the entire excruciating.
I think I'd like to make a motion that we move forward with item 8C.
I would like to hear it. I'd like to go through it all. And I think
I can
everyone would
stop
enjoy
and we can
that.
go through it.
I'm leaning to this side just a little.
So this is one where you can blame legal for bringing it to you. Because it was passed over 10 years ago, I recommended that it come back to you, even though it is just a word change.
Well, yeah, it's a formality, and we appreciate you doing it right. We appreciate you. We have confidence in the documents you review. I'm happy to entertain a motion. I think it ought to come from this side over here. That way you can stay on Lester's good side.
Well, I'll try then. So you guys making me do this, huh?
Mm-hmm.
So I will make a motion to approve an ordinance amending the Washington City Code, Title 7, Chapter 1, Article B, drinking water source protection by repealing and replacing in its entirety.
All right, have a motion by Councilmember Casperson.
Mayor, I will second that motion.
Second by Ivy. Are we comfortable with that? Do we just need to verify that from the word feet today?
Yep. We just need to take a vote on it, and then we're happy.
Okay. Have a motion by Casperson, second by Ivy. We'll do roll call vote. Coates?
Aye.
Henderson?
Aye.
Ivy?
Aye.
Casperson?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. We'll move on to item 9, public hearings. And for the record, we received no electronic public comment on any of the public hearing items that are here this evening. So we'll move on to item 9A, which is a public hearing and consideration to approve an ordinance for zone change request Z-22-02 from C2 Service Commercial to C3 Community Commercial, located approximately at Merritt Way and Bluffview Drive. And a Community Development Director, Drew Ellerman, will present on this.
Thank you, Mayor. As stated, applicants request an approval to change the zoning of approximately 1.83 acres. The requested change, as stated, is from the current Service Commercial C2 zoning to the proposed General Commercial C3 zoning designation. The C3 request for the purpose of increasing the permitted uses at this already commercially zoned property. This particular location has a general planned use designation of regional commercial, which allows for the C3 zoning district. The surrounding zoning to this parcel is open space to the north, which is the interstate I-15, administrative professional to the west, which is oddly the city's parks department yard, and then PUD to the south and C2 to the east. Staff had no concerns with this proposed zone change as outlined. Applicant is in accordance with the general plan. The Planning Commission reviewed this request at their March 2nd meeting, and the Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of Z-22-02 for the zone change from C2 to C3 zoning designation, and that's on to you, the city council. And it's based on the findings within your report. I'll be glad to answer any questions the council has on this zone change proposal.
Council, any questions for Drew?
Mayor, I don't have any questions, just maybe one comment when we seek to approve this. And my suggestion is, and I do this now so that you can comment on this. I went and looked at the site, and the only condition that I would like to see on this particular agenda item is that what I understand, the only difference from C2 to C3 is allowing for a bay to spray. And there may be more to it than that, but spray. And so if that's the case, I would just ask that we require that the spray bay be on the north end, closer freeway away from the residential, and the PUD residential to the south. Very simple, hopefully not a complicated change, but you can see the residential to the south, PUD residential there in that cul-de-sac. It'd be easy just to put the spray bay at the north if that is.
A use? You're talking about a certain use?
Yeah, I'm saying that my understanding is that from C2 to C3, the only difference is that they need that C3 so that there can be spray, like if they're painting a car. And so my concern is that with those fumes, they might drift down into those residential area where we could just make a motion or a condition to put it on the north end. That's all.
And I appreciate that. Just with this being zoning, we don't know what it is. So that's why can we put it on there is my question. I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm just.
It sounds like the councilman might have an idea of what the future use will be. I understand where you're coming from.
It'd be more of a recommendation than a commission.
Right.
Exactly. So I just want clarification.
Accepted.
Okay.
Recommendation, sorry.
Really good point. I think that's, I'm glad that the applicant can hear that, because that certainly is sensitive to those residents there on the south side. Any other comments along that line? Would the applicant like to speak before I open the public hearing, or would you like to speak after the public hearing? It might make a difference of about 10 seconds or less, I think.
Did we make him come up now and then sit down and then do the public hearing and then have him come up?
We got to be nice to this guy. We know him. We know him. We like him.
Mayor,
Okay.
if I might, Drew, if you'll zoom out and just show Merritt Way, there's just one item. It's not on tonight's application, but it's a detail that we're working with the applicant on to adjust. You'll see, and I'm doing this because sometimes we get, hey, why isn't this road? Why doesn't it look like what we saw last time? So you see how Merritt Way loops right there, and it is built. The plan is for Merritt Way to be relocated by the applicant as the auto mall comes along. So see that design, but know that that's going to be changed, and those applications will come to you when the time's appropriate.
And that's actually a different applicant than this particular piece, but same idea.
Correct.
Appreciate that. Appreciate that detail there, Thad. Okay, at this time, I will open the public hearing for any who would like to speak to item 9A. Seeing nobody come forward, I'll close the public hearing and invite the applicant to come forward if he would like, and share anything or answer any questions that you'd like to share with the council.
Mayor and council, thanks for giving me this opportunity. I can confirm that the thought is for this piece is to put a collision center that will assist with the auto mall. It will be in high-end fashion. It'll be designed by the same designer that's doing the buildings for the auto mall and things like that. I've actually, to address Councilman Ivey, I've actually seen the plans. Now they're subject to change, but from what I've seen for going on it right now, the spray booth, which it would have, is on the north. So it's planned for that. So I think that would be something that would work just fine. And if there's any other questions you have for me, happy to answer them.
We appreciate that, Greg. Councilman MacArthur, we appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
Okay, council, further discussion and or motion on this item?
I'll make a motion that we approve the public, or make a motion, I'm out of sorts. I'll make a motion that we approve zone change Z-22-02 from C2 to C3. It's from community commercial, located approximately Merritt Way.
I have a motion by Councilmember Coates.
Second that.
Second by Councilmember Henderson. We'll do a roll call vote. Ivy,
Aye.
Casperson,
Aye.
Henderson,
Aye.
Coates.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. I have a zone change there. Moving on to item 9B. This is also a public hearing. There was no public comment electronically submitted on this item. This is consideration to approve an ordinance vacating, abandoning a public easement located in Sunrise Valley Industrial subdivision at approximately Countryway and Smelter Drive. Community Development Director Drew Ellerman.
I don't think this one's mine. Who's
Eldon,
Eldon's doing
you got this one?
Good. Yeah.
Mayor, councilman, Eldon Gibbs, city planner. I'll get in the habit of saying that. I'm not used to that. This one's pretty cut and dry. On the map there, you can see the dotted line. It's an abandoned easement. The applicant's wanting to get rid of that. Future buildings will be there, and they're going to relocate it to the roadway.
So Eldon, is this where the road is? I was having a hard time getting my bearings on exactly. This looked like this is where the existing dirt road was, and the engineer's shaking his head like, yes, it is. Okay. So my only concern is that it does not get abandoned until the other part is really constructed, right? Like, is that it? I just don't want to cut off access or utility. Is that a concern is all? Has staff looked at that?
Yeah, be simultaneously swapped out.
Yeah, simultaneously swapped out. That when this gets done, we have the access from the road at the same time, I'm assuming.
So you just want the recording done at the time when that happens. You
Simultaneously.
can go ahead and approve it tonight.
Yeah.
We'll keep things in place so you don't have to come back, and then
Yeah,
we'll
that's
just
all I'm
do,
asking is that it
just as
gets
part of the
recorded.
motion, we'll just make it that it won't be recorded until the other one's in place, the new road's in place with everything in it. That's,
Yeah, I just don't want to, who knows what happens, and then all of a sudden we don't have an easement there, and then
because we've abandoned it and we need it
plat's
again.
not there anymore, and don't want to go, you never know, so.
Is this a recorded easement or is this a historic easement?
It's recorded.
So it's a recorded easement.
Any further questions for Eldon? Okay, this time I'll open the public hearing. Would anyone like to speak to item 9B? Seeing no one come forward, I'll close the public hearing. And I'd just like the applicant to come forward and just be on the record that you're comfortable with what Councilman Coates was mentioning there. And if you wouldn't mind stating, I know you know the routine.
My name is Rick Meyer with Bush and Gudgel, and it is an existing water line easement, so it's not an access easement, but to your point, we do need to provide access to Western Rocks Pit. And we're totally comfortable with just hanging on to this, approve it, hang on to it until we're ready to record the plat, which is coming right around the corner as well. So just record them both at the same time as far as I'm concerned, so.
Perfect. This is a great project. It was very much needed. Council, unless there's further discussion, I'll call for a motion on item 9B.
Mayor, I move that we approve an ordinance vacating and abandoning a public easement located in Sunrise Valley Industrial Subdivision at approximately Countryway and Smelter Drive.
I have a motion by Henderson,
Second.
second by Casperson. We'll go roll call vote. Coates?
Can we add the condition that they'll be recorded simultaneously with the plat?
I'll add the condition that it will be recorded simultaneously with the plat.
We still have a second.
Still good with that?
Yes.
All right, we have a modification to the motion. We have a first and a second. Recorder, did you get that? I'm assuming yes. We'll do roll call vote. Coates?
Aye.
Ivy?
Aye.
Casperson?
Aye.
Henderson?
Aye.
Passes. Item 9B passes unanimously. We'll move on to item 9C. On this item, there was no public comment submitted electronically. This is a public hearing and consideration to approve an ordinance vacating, abandoning a public easement located at the future Maverick site at approximately 990 West Buena Vista Boulevard. And Power Director Rick Hansen, I believe, is taking this one.
That's what Eldon told me. Yeah, this is in conjunction where the old Chevron was and the new Maverick will be. There are two easements that are shown there highlighted. The smaller one on the west, I don't believe we have anything in right now. The one kind of is right now on the east side of the property that will in the future be right in the middle of the property. I think they need this abandonment now so they can move forward with probably financing and whatnot. But similar to what just transpired, we need to make sure it's included in the motion that the easement cannot be abandoned until the new facilities are installed and in operation before that can be abandoned. But other than that, they've got easements all around the property for the future relocations and those kind of things, so I don't see any issues.
There is live power in that one to the east right now.
Yes. Yeah, it goes up and actually goes behind where the old store was. I'm not sure why there's not a east-west piece shown in here. These date clear back to Utah power days. But yeah, the power goes up and then to the west and feeds the west side of Green Springs. So we can't remove those until this project relocates those facilities. So.
All right. You're comfortable with this, Rick?
Yeah. With that, just condition in there, that's the only thing to make sure.
Great. Any questions, comments for Mr. Hansen? Okay. At this time, I will open the public hearing and invite anyone who would like to speak to this to come forward. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. I notice the applicant is here. Do you have anything to add to this?
Actually, Rich Pigott with Maverick. We're the leasee of the smaller parcel and the owners of the ones on the perimeter. Just all we want to do is we agree with staff. We can accomplish rerouting the electrical power and making sure those are contained in the easements once we're abandoning these ones in place. Just want to thank Eldon Gibb, Mike Roosh, Rick Hansen, and John Hinkey for all the efforts they've made for us. Maverick's looking forward to another store in Washington and just want to get under construction.
Fantastic. Well, while you're here, and we would certainly echo and appreciate that recognition to our staff. What is your time frame on this project?
Our management is really excited about this store. We're looking to get a grading permit fairly rapidly so we can at least start construction. The goal is to hopefully open this into our fourth quarter this year.
Fantastic. Great. Thank you, Rich.
I can't wait. I love Maverick, and I live right up the street, so I'm excited about this.
Councilman Henderson, I think I hear a motion on that end of the bench.
Mayor, I motion that we approve an ordinance vacating, abandoning a public easement located at the future Maverick site, approximately 990 West Buena Vista Boulevard. And the condition is
that it be vacated at the time of the construction of the site.
At the construction of the site.
Does that pass? All right. We've got a motion by Councilman Henderson. And a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Coates. We'll do a roll call vote. Casperson?
Aye.
Coates?
Aye.
Henderson?
Aye.
Ivy?
Aye.
9C passes unanimously. All right, we'll move on to item 10, which is a report of officers from assigned committees. Be happy to start with whoever would like to go first.
Well, I will say that had no committee assignments since the last meeting, so nothing new to report.
All right.
I haven't either, so but thank you.
Okay. Anything on this side?
I just want to quickly thank all the people that helped with the event yesterday. The Parks Department, they set up all the tables 2 times because we put them in a different spot. And then just people from the community that came, and then it was really awesome, and just appreciative of everyone that was there to help and show appreciation and support for our firefighters and police officers.
Perfect. Any updates on Cotton Days? That's okay. We're far enough out that we'll be here all night with that, right?
Maybe next, because we just really had a meeting, but maybe next meeting I can share more details with that.
Well, and you're gracious to share the thanks amongst the staff, and they did wonderful. But there's no doubt that you were the driving force behind this event, and we appreciate you, Councilmember Casperson. You did a wonderful job, Councilman Ivy.
You know, I do have just a couple of items real quick. Jordan touched a little bit on HB 11. That was the transgender bill. You know, I was listening to the session on the last day, and it was quite a heated exchange that took place on the floor of the Senate. And it was quite impassioned, and you know, you had that sense that it was going to be a close vote, and it was. And the vote was so close that that enabled the governor to veto it, which he has done. This special session that's coming up that was aforementioned is going to have a lot of that same topic. There was a lot of our senators that were just willing to outright do a ban, and there was some others that wanted to meet closer in the middle, and then they were trying to weigh in other interest groups in that conversation as well. It got complicated, and anyway, one of the main talking points though that kept coming up was the fear of lawsuits and the negotiations and those type of things. But just want to mention that is this weekend. We'll have an update for you next council meeting on that. It's something that I know everyone has strong feelings about, and it's something that that we need to be aware of. We look very much forward to next session being there and being on the front side of these discussions and being able to advocate on the front side. The only other thing, Mayor, I apologize, I failed to mention the League of Cities and Towns Mid-Year Conference is April 20th through the 22nd. So those of you that can attend that, it's here in Southern Utah. So that will be convenient just to be right here. I believe it's at the Dixie Center. And then the last thing I'd talk about really quickly is I did have a Suntran meeting, which is part of my responsibilities at the Regional Mobility at MPO. And we detailed our Suntran ridership numbers, and they really tell a story about what stops are really carrying the most individuals. But and I'd make those available if anyone would like to see those. But what I wanted to talk about was there is one bench and shade cover available. We had ordered these clear last summer, and the way it's worked out is that we have installed one there at the Walmart that you may have noticed. And we went over some of these ridership numbers and where the right location was, because in the summertime, if there's no shade, that makes it very, very hard to wait for a bus if you're standing in the direct sun. So we do have some locations that we're looking at, but we do have those available. We probably need to have that discussion to see if we want to purchase those there. The biggest question is being able to get them in the future. We have this, it is available, so we need to probably have that discussion whether we want it, and if we do, where it should go. Other than that, you know, the last thing I'd mention as far as Suntran is there has been discussion for some time and continues on a second bus route into Washington that would actually access through the Washington Fields into St. George Fields area and go back across 1450 South in St. George. So we're anxiously working on this. We want this to be in place approximately the same time that we finish our Wills Park. We want to be able to have all parts of our community to be able to access that park, and the bus would make that means possible. You know, remember our original conversation was that we wanted our youth here in the downtown area to be able to access this park as well, and this would be able to do that. So we're working to that end. And Mayor, that is all I have. Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, I'll just give a brief update on a few things. So with the Metropolitan Planning Organization, our projects with our update to our master transportation plan have been added. They continue to work on long-range planning regionally. The COG did grant some of the COG funds to the city of St. George and to Ivans at our last meeting. A bulk share of that went towards projects along the 3000 East project corridor in the city of St. George, which certainly benefits everyone regionally. And then some of the funds went to land acquisition for future western corridor out in Ivans. So that continues to be a good project, a good committee, and it's good cooperation. Another thing that Udot is at those meetings, and they continue to move forward with the design of the exit 11 interchange, and I'm hearing that design will be done sometime this year, and that they'll put that out for bid. There's it's a widening project and an interchange, and certainly the cost of construction has gone up, so that poses some challenges. But frankly, they'll be possibly pulling from other projects to help fund this project, and they are also very aware of our desire to have any and every traffic calming measure possible as it exits to the north onto Buena Vista and Main, and to the south on Main Street. And then with the Washington County Water Conservancy District, we continue to be conservation minded. Funding is going to the graveyard projects, the Toker and Ash Creek projects, to reuse is on our mind, and a number of those things. So we continue to make progress there. And I've been asked to serve on a couple of additional boards. So at the April 13th council meeting, I may hand off some of my assignments to other council members, if that's okay. I'll bring that back to you, and then just kind of make you aware of some of those other assignments that I've got. And I think that's everything I have. Is there anything else to add before we move on to city manager report? All right.
Sorry. I just want to say something really quick. I had a comment from a resident who said she wondered why sometimes when we have different agenda items, there's not much discussion. And so I just wanted to say that there's a lot of preparation that goes into these meetings, that we try to get all well, I guess I can just speak for myself, but I know you guys are, doing the work and asking the questions to try to get as many questions as we can. So when we're here, we're prepared and ready to to make a decision. And so I just wanted to say that, just in case there's other people that are wondering, why there's sometimes not discussions that are happening or questions, and then that we make these decisions, we are taking the time to be prepared before these meetings.
Absolutely. Well said, council member. I worry more if there's too much discussion during the meeting. Then I love it that each of you come prepared. I really appreciate that. Jeremy.
Thank you, Mayor. I have just a couple of items. Number one, it came to our attention this week that sometimes when we have after hours items that are non-emergency, but they require city utilities or issues, of course, if it's an emergency, we want you to call 911. I know all of our 30,000 plus residents are listening right now, so this is good information for all of them. If it's non-emergency, but it relates to a power outage or a water leak or some other city issue, our main city number, 435-656-6300, has after hours answering, and they can get that taken care of. We may look at ways to make that a little more prominent on the website. Calling the city manager might be the least effective or takes the longest to get your problem resolved.
Does calling the police chief help for my power outage?
It happens, but it just probably takes extra calls. Anyway, I know that's good, and we like answering those, but as far as speed, that's probably the best way to get it handled.
So make a note, he prefers texting, not the phone call.
Yeah, that number I gave out is my own personal cell number, so after hours, we got it. Number two, I think everybody, the new council members may not know, but each year we produce a city management report, and I'm finalizing the 2021 management report, and I should have it for the April 13th meeting. It's kind of interesting, and I've worked a little bit with some staff members, specifically Lester, on some different population numbers, just to kind of give you a little bit of an insight into what that report looks like. There's a big difference between our census population and what we're going to start calling our service population. And I think that we'll show some of those things in that report, so we can have some good discussion about that next meeting. That report also shows a lot of our statistics for the year, which I find very interesting, our accomplishments and some of the goals that we have for the upcoming year. So stay tuned for that. And third, Mike reminded me, the Transportation Commission, that's the State Transportation Commission, will be meeting here in this room Friday morning at 8:30. I know the mayor's welcoming them. But that's a big deal to have them here at Washington City. And so if anybody would like to come and participate in that, we'd like to make them feel welcome. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy, and I appreciate you bringing up that. We'll have most of the executive team from Udot here, and so if you'd like to even just come for the first few minutes, it'd be great to just say hello. And okay, there are a couple of items for closed session, but nothing pressing. So given the fact that there's nothing pressing and that I'd like to have Councilmember Martinson here, I think I'm going to recommend that we do not go into closed session this evening. If everyone's okay with that.
No argument.
And with that said, I will call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A motion by Coates.
I'll second that motion, Mayor.
Second by Ivy. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Appreciate everyone. Thank you.